why I took him to get candy so you could get your. They were busy.
We anticipate, we don't have at the current time Councilmember Kim Rodella, but we do anticipate that she'll be joining us here shortly. We would like to begin our meeting with an invocation by Councilmember Ron Campbell, and then I have a special musical that we're going to have that will be our national anthem, and we've invited Kara College to come up and do that. And following the national anthem, we will then have the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Doug Courtney. So,
Our kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we are grateful, Father, to live in this country and this part of Thy vineyard. We appreciate Highland and everything that it represents. We're grateful to live in a constitutional republic where we have freedom and liberty. We ask that Thy Spirit would be with us, guide us in our discussions, temper our feelings and emotions. We're mindful of the events, recent events that are tragic, and ask that Thy blessings would be with those who are affected, both directly and indirectly. Bless them and strengthen them. We ask for Thy guidance at this time and do so in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
amen. Kara. Please stand, everyone.
So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rackets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'm going to head down for the next one. If I have that council, please join me down here below. So tonight for our city council meeting here at the very beginning, we want to recognize we've had several individuals in our community who did a lot of service for many years. And some of them, we have the Highland Fling the first week of August. And there's several that go and put forth a lot of time and effort to be able to make sure that fling comes off with different events that happen. And so there's individuals we'd like to recognize tonight for their service with the fling and appreciate the many years. As I was looking across, I think each of these have all been here for years helping us with the fling. So if I could have the following individuals please come up. Brandon Bachman, Shauna Larson, Kelly Campbell, Kelly out there, Doug Courtney, which is on City Council. We have Ron Campbell, that's also on City Council. And then we'll have the Lone Peak Police and Fire, if they'll please come up. Now, we have a couple of individuals that won't be joining us tonight because they have other commitments. We have Claudia Sudwicks with our historical committee that will not be here tonight. We have Tammy Parker, who was with our Play Day Rodeo. We have Roy, and I thought Roy was going to join us tonight. We have Roy Buehler that was with our horseshoes. If you've never seen Roy, Roy is a national champion horseshoe thrower. And he comes and he helps us with our horseshoe tournament. And then Lane Downs, who's not here tonight, also helped us with our car show. And if you haven't been to the car show, you are missing something. Lane does a great job. But tonight, I would like to just recognize those who helped us with the fling to make it a success. Sometimes when you do a fling, you don't know at the beginning of the year how to look at the end or how things are going to come together. And I think each year has its flavor. And I think we had a flavor this year, is all I'll say. So I appreciate it. But I want to recognize our Lone Peak Police Department. We always think of the parade, but there's a lot of different events that are going on. This year, we had a unique situation right before the fireworks, or in the middle of the evening, as things, we actually had a fire. Very rarely do we have a fire, but we had a fire in our business district that took some of our public safety workers away. Next person I'd like to recognize is Ron Campbell. Ron is on our city council. Just tell you thank you, Ron. He is the one over. Thank you. Now the next person is Dodd Corporal. Now Dodd puts on a great parade. And yes, for many years, it's a lot of work and a lot of effort. Thank you, Dodd. The next one is Kelly Campbell. Now, if you came and heard the great band and all that we've had, it was Kelly that found us that great band. So thank you, Kelly. The next one is a little special in my heart because it's Sharna Larson with the Arts Council. And when I was on the city council, I was one of the representatives there with the Arts Council. And it's amazing the time and love you put forth, not just with the Arts Council, but I know you do a lot with the seniors in our areas. I just want to tell you thank you, Sean. Now, if anyone has not been up to our Beacon Hills Park, if you see our Frisbee golf course that's up there, that is Brandon Bachman that does that. And so we want to recognize Brandon for the many hours we put in trying to hide some of those little Frisbee things, but also the platforms and everything to make sure that park. So it's not just the fling that Brandon does it. Brandon will be up there making sure that course is put together. And I know we were up there walking as a council. The Brandon's Trail, this is Brandon. Thank you, Brandon. I also want to recognize the city council and the staff. We've had many hours put together by our staff to help the fling count, as well as the city council as they put in their time to be able to be there, as well as the residents. We had several other residents that came and donated their time to help with cleaning. We had a group of youth that came down with cleaning. We've had other volunteers. So I just want to tell everyone thank you for their service there. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item number 2B, which all of us use this service that's going to come up, and they're going to give us a little bit of an update on the operations of our Timpanogos Sewer District. We call it the poop plant. So if we could have Brian Braithwaite come up and help us maybe get a little bit of information on the Timpanogos Special Service District. Those who don't know Brian served as 12 years on the city council, and we appreciate his time there, and he keeps serving the city here at the Timpanogos Special Service District as a city representative. So, Brian.
Mayor, do you want to do unpublic scheduled appearances after this?
Yes, after,
okay.
Sorry.
Yes, we all love the poop plant because if it doesn't work, everybody complains. So nobody wants to complain about the poop plant not working. The reason why I'm here, a couple things to bring to your attention, give you an update on how the plant's doing. We've been expanding the plant over the last several years. We have several more years to do. and complete the construction of the additions to it. The difficulty with a plant like this is you have to get a lot of permits, you have to forecast things into the future, and that's not an easy thing to do. And one of the handouts that you're going to see is a discussion about chemicals that are in the water. PFAS is the chemical name or the standard name that's being used. But these are forever chemicals that never go away. And one of the things that we deal with is nitrogen and phosphorus and all these other chemicals, trying to make sure that we treat the water and take care of that. And the government continues to monitor, but they also want to change the levels that we have to treat. And it becomes very expensive. And sometimes everybody thinks the poop plant is the cause of many problems. And as we go through this, we find that actually many of the farmers who use fertilizer on their fields, the water comes off their fields, goes into Utah Lake, and it actually has a 10 times more impact to Utah Lake than what we do in the treatment plant. So every time we get hit with some kind of new regulation, us as residents sometimes have to pay the cost, and it's not always the right place to put the cost. Sometimes it has to be in other places. So our goal is to make sure that we are carrying our fair share at the poop plant, that we are actually, you know, if it's something that has to do with us and our treatment, then that cost should be carried by us. But if it's someone else, they should be carrying those costs. PFAS is something that we don't create, we have to treat. And the reason why it became an issue is it's going to be extremely expensive to treat this. And what we're pushing for is to get those who create PFAS chemicals into the system, for us to be able to go back and get reimbursed for the costs that we are doing to treat their issue. So if they don't choose to give us money, we will sue them to get them to give us the money to treat their issues. And think of it this way, if you had some chemical truck come through Highland City, and because they drove on your roads, our roads here, and they had a spill, who's responsible for the cleanup of the spill? Of course it's Highland because it was your road, right? It's not their fault because they created the chemical, they were driving it, it was their accident. You can understand the parallel between this is the poop plant, Timpanogos wastewater treatment plant is there to clean up stuff, but if we weren't the ones creating it and we're having to take care of it, those who created this burden should be the ones doing it. Just like a truck coming through the city, they should be the ones responsible for cleanup. So those are some of the things that we're dealing with. We're trying to make sure that the residents in Highland aren't carrying a higher burden than what they should. You know, pass out the cost to those who are responsible. So those are a couple of things. I included a little bit of news that talks about PFAS so you can get a little bit of a feel for it. And the other piece has to do with the cost. So in building this treatment plant, expanding the treatment plant, it's very expensive. These are a lot of hard costs to be able to treat the water, and you have to project it into the future. We started this plant enhancement or growth back in 2015. So we started thinking about it, designing, getting prepared for it. We started the actual designs and those kinds of things in 2020. Bids started coming in 2020. Those bids as of 2025 are 2.5 times what they were when we did the initial preparation for this. We wanted to get a feel for what it would cost so we could figure out what the need was for revenue and to be able to cover the costs. But those have gone up 250% from when we started making the initial pieces. So with that in mind, we're talking about having continual increases in what the user rates are and what the impact fees are. So in 2023, I approached you and talked to you about how we had projected the costs in the future, because as an impact to you as Highland City, one of the problems is you get our calendar year is our fiscal year, your fiscal year is July 1st through June, and coming in halfway through the year is really hard to adjust your budgets. So we've tried to give you advance notice. So we've given you, last year we gave you an advance notice that 2025 and 2026 were going to be a 15% increase. So 2026 is January 1st through December of 2026. This year, we've realized, and we brought this forward actually 3 years ago to let you know into the future, we were going to do a 40%. We talked about 3 years of 15 and then go to a 3% after that so that we can make sure we were covering these costs. And we were hoping that tariffs and other kinds of things would not be as high as they are, and they have been. So we are going to pass this year another 15%, which is the 2027 that we talked about before. We're going to do that. We were hoping that we wouldn't have to. We were hoping that we could reduce it. But with all the inflationary costs and everything else, we're going to stick to what that schedule was. We anticipate 3% after that. We've been doing some evaluations on our impact fees. Those will be going up. You have the resolution that I passed out, so you have a copy of that resolution. It will show you what those increases are going to be over the next few years. So you can have those people who are building carry their cost, their fair share of what's going on in the build that we're doing, and also covering the cost, the additional costs that we're having to cover with all the inflation and other cost increases that we've been dealing with. So unfortunately, bearer of bad news, that those costs are all going to go up. The good news is that we've kept costs down. We've done a lot of changes in the plant operations to reduce costs from what they were before. So we're increasing them not just because of the inflation, but because our growth for the area, we are seeing about a 25% growth in the past few years, and we can see that continuing on into the future. And so we have to build this out now so that we can cover that cost. Impact fees are those who come in the future who will have to pay those fees and their share of this cost of the expansion of this plant. So that's my update on what's going on. The expansion is going, it's on target. We plan on spending about $310 million in 2026. It's going to be a big year in spending. We've been building and designing and prepping for the past several years, and this is going to be one of the biggest expenditure years, this one and 2027, and then we'll see the costs or the expenditure start coming down because we'll be getting closer to finishing it. So questions?
I got one.
Please.
So you talk about this EPA rule that has to do with the PFAS, hazardous substances.
Uh-huh.
Are they coming out of chemical plants, or are they just in the water from everybody's household?
Chemical plants. They're coming from the chemicals that make plastics, that make all sorts of things that we consume and exist in our environment for forever.
So do we have a lot of those plants in North Utah County?
It's not just the plants, it's actually the use of it as well. So when you try to dispose of those kinds of products into the environment, it gets into the environment.
Right.
So they are being created here, they're being used here, and they're getting into our water system just like anywhere else. So there are some locations that are much worse than ours.
Right, because I'm not aware of a lot of chemical plants in North Utah County. Are there?
We have Texas Instruments right here. So getting them to change their processes and not use forever chemicals. They have been using those kinds of things in the past, and this is becoming a big deal, so they're doing it less.
So it's usually used in some sort of manufacturing.
Manufacturing or a service.
Uh-huh.
So if they're using chemicals for their service, for cleaning cars, as an example, the substances used to help clean your cars when you go to a car wash, same kinds of things. They can be in those, they can be in all sorts of things that we may not be aware of.
So I assume you have some way to detect those in your system? Or
We do, and we have processes to get them out. but they're very expensive. And the tolerance for them, designed by the EPA, is a very high. So it's 1 part per 7 billion, something like that. I'm not, don't quote me on that. I can get you the right number, but it's, to be able to maintain or to have it cleaned to that point is very, very expensive. And so for that cost to be passed on, it makes more sense, because the regulations for having to do that and the cost of the equipment for us to have to buy and to implement is just, it's going to be a big impact for us.
So any effluent or everything that comes out of the treatment plant before it goes in wherever it goes, the lake or whatever,
Goes into the lake.
yeah, you have to prove that you're down at that low.
We have it tested when it comes in, and we have it tested when it goes out. yeah.
Okay. So the other question I had is, you were talking a lot about inflation. I thought the inflation rate this year is less than 3%.
So the bids, literally the bids in 2025 for the things that we have to purchase, about an 8%. That's the lowest we've seen. So in 5 years, it's been about 250% aggregate. This year and the last several months have been some of the lowest.
Is that just supply chain things is what you're talking about?
It has to do with all the things, all the reasons why your eggs cost more, your milk costs more, up to steel prices, where the tariffs have been hitting, because we consume a lot of cement, a lot of steel, a lot of other kinds of things, technology, all of that. So it kind of peaked a little bit from its growth, but it's still going up. It's just not at the same trajectory up as it was before.
So you must import a lot of stuff then?
Some of it,
Yeah.
yeah.
So Brian, I have a question. When you look at the fees, is everything equal across, is it by household or like by their usage? Are you billing each city a different usage by what they do use, or how you guys do your billing?
It's a great question. The billing is based upon users. It's based upon what we call ERUs, just like we use here.
Okay.
And so we're trying to make sure that we define it in a way that's fair to everyone. So the high density locations, we're trying to make sure that it's fair usage there, as well as low density types of things. We have some buildings that have gone into Vineyard where they're telling us, you know, of course the usage can't be that high, and then we go in and find that the usage is actually higher than what they're claiming. They pack a lot more students in there, or they pack a lot more families in there, and we have the same thing. You know, we have 2 or 3 families that can move into a home and increase it. So you have to kind of determine what the average is and adjust to an average. And they were claiming that they could only have 2 or 3 people in some of their facilities, and it was clear that that was much higher. If you go try to park there, you can see that it's much higher than what they thought as well.
Interesting.
But it's not extreme, but we're trying to make sure it's fair. Good
So
question.
how long will this upgrade last? Like, is this a 20-year upgrade? What's kind of lifespan of it?
That's a great question. It varies, because some of the big pipes, we're putting in some pipes that are 85 inches in diameter. Yeah, so I can walk through it without any problems. Some of those are going to be for 40 years in some of the locations that we're putting those. But some of the things that we're doing, as regulations change, we have to adjust. And so we built this in a modular way where we can add on pieces that we can adjust for the EPA's regulations that will be coming. If we grow faster than what we think we're currently projecting, then we may have to expand. So there are pieces that will fail sooner. We're using current infrastructure to make sure that we get its full lifespan. So we're not trying to throw away pieces that were older technology. We're trying to retrofit those so that we can continue to use those. But they will fail at some point in time, so we'll have to replace those. But this is a 30-year outlook for the volume that we're going to be doing. We are projecting out 60 years, so that we're watching how those growth rates are hitting so that we can make sure that we're being prepared. But this is supposed to take us another 30 years.
Do you know if the volume that you handle tracks with population? I mean, are we flat per capita, or are we increasing or decreasing use?
We've decreased a little bit over time, and I think a lot of the technology that we implement and the rules that we put in place help adjust for some of those things. But it's leveling off. There was some decrease, and it's leveled out now, so we're not seeing any significant change in it at this point in time. Some of the other things that we're trying to do is make sure that there's not gaps in our system that allow water to come in that we end up treating when we have a big rain like we had a little while ago, a week ago, that won't infiltrate into our system. And so if we can shut some of those things down, that will also help maintain the volume in the projections that we have.
So asking a question off that, so we've been lining our sewer pipes, so there's not so much groundwater that comes in, especially when there's high water level. Is that helpful then?
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that we're talking about. And so we have a meter that comes out of Highland, and so when you add that kind of thing into Highland and into your sewer system here, then it will lower the flow that's going out, and we will pay less. So Highland has rates that are specific to Highland because of our flow and the rates here. If we can do things like that, it will benefit our residents. And we want you to do it. I mean, it impacts everybody else. If the flow in Lehigh, being a much bigger city, if they have a lot of this infiltration, it's going to force us to grow faster. They're paying more, but we still have to build a new facility if they don't temper those inflows.
Do you have any idea how many millions of gallons of stuff comes out of Highland?
I don't off the top of my head.
So I understand in last year we pumped $415 million, or million gallons of water in our culinary system. I assume that all ends up in the sewer at some point.
A lot of it does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I'd like to know how much goes in there.
Yeah, we
It's
still have-
interesting that it says that it's 205.8 gallons per day. My water usage, I just happened to notice on the bill, was 3,000 for the month. That's not 205 a day, so
per person.
is that per person? No, my total water usage at my home was 3,000 gallons for last month.
What are you doing with all your water?
Yeah, well, that's pretty low compared to 205.8 gallons per day that is apparently leaving our homes, our domestic homes.
And if you multiply that out, so yours is going to be a little bit lower because you have less in your home than a younger family that would have and be using it.
Of course, 2 people versus 6, 5, 6,
Yeah.
7, yeah. It's just interesting to me. 205 a day is a lot of water going out of the home.
Yeah.
And that's not just water going out of a home, that's water going out of our aquifer.
Any other questions for Mr. Braithwaite? Brian, we really appreciate your time to come and kind of,
Well, glad to come.
unfortunately, it's bad news to hear that rates are going up, so. I
Yeah,
understand.
and this is one of many rates that you guys have to deal with because, you know, if you see the inflation that we're dealing with, you guys are dealing with some level of inflation on all the things that you deal with too. So it's just, it feels like as residents, we just keep getting dumped on.
Yeah.
But, you know, there is no profit in this. These are real costs. We go out to bid, we do all we can, and the cost per individual is going down or has gone down from this upgrade. But it's still overall more expensive, so it's hard.
For clarity, on the 2026 is 7,023. Is the 2027 at 7,198? That's like 2.3% increase. Is that what you're saying you're able to stay with?
So those are the impact fees
Right.
that we're projecting out. The user rates are not those.
No,
Those
I
are
understand
impact fees.
that.
But yes,
I'm
that's,
just talking about on the impact fees. I
we
just want
we believe that it will stay at that level
Okay.
that you see.
and you don't know in 2028, 2029, but you're projecting these numbers.
No, and we try to be conservative. I mean, we try to say,
Sure.
this is where we believe, or we could possibly be lower.
Yeah.
We're trying not to say, here it is, and then all of a sudden come back and go, oops.
Well, in today's
But you never
world, the
know.
2.3% increase seems reasonable to me.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay?
I wanted to just remind the council that if you remember about a year ago, based on TSSD's increase, we kind of looked at our sewer fund again and kind of looked at some rate increases. And we anticipate a rate increase we're going to have to then pass along to our residents. And so David and I have just been texting back and forth, reminding each other of that. And so we'll take another look at the study, make sure that 15% increase is incorporated, and then bring back the council a recommendation.
Could we take a minute and describe why we have two fees, the sewer fee and a sewer district fee, just for those who may not understand it? Because I'm not sure I understand it.
So David, would you like to explain that, why we have a sewer fee and a district fee?
I'd love to try. Yeah, so it was decided before I came. I don't know. Do you remember, Aaron, exactly what year this was decided? It used to be just one fee for sewer, but there was a point where I don't know if it was administration or the council asked to have that split up between what the city's cost is. Sorry, I think my mic is dying. What the city's cost is, and then what is associated with the TSSD service, so that the residents, when they see it on their bill, would know this portion that we're paying is for the city's maintenance of their lines. This portion is for the treatment at TSSD. So it was an effort, I think, to be more transparent on the bills. This is really cutting out, but it's debatable, I guess, of whether that was favorable or not, or just more confusing than anything. But
So our portion would include then the lining of the sewer lines, comes out of that $9 or whatever
that was
it
the
is.
intent. And then over the years, I think the amounts that we're charging, the actual fees have kind of gotten off base of what we're actually expending in each of those different categories. And so part of the study, the reason we wanted to change the rates how we did is to try and bring that more in balance. So we would like eventually for the city portion to be really what we're expending on city maintenance for our lines, and then the TSSD portion, what we're actually paying on to TSSD.
Exactly, good,
So
thank you.
we made that in 2009 because we wanted people to know, look, that's not our fault.
Yes,
That is, they're making the decision over there.
well, from our end,
And
of it,
we're
we love
making
that.
Yeah, and it's to distinguish the difference between our lines internally and theirs. And people would come in and complain, go, look at all this money I'm spending. Why is Highland spending all that? And you can say, here's our portion of it.
That's right.
Here's their portion of it.
That's right,
So
that's right.
yeah, that's
I think it's
exactly what we
important.
did. And that was the reason, is to clarify that.
Well, it's a good move, thank you.
Okay, thank you. It is now time to go what's called unscheduled public appearances. We'd like to invite anyone here that would like to come up and address the council. We do not have any items on the agenda which will have a public hearing. So if there's anything even on the agenda that you would like to maybe address, we'd like to invite you to come up during the unscheduled public appearances. So at this time, we'll open up for unscheduled public appearances. If you'll please state your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Okay, anyone like to come up? Anyone? Brandon, you want? Okay. Seeing none, we'll now close the unscheduled public appearances, and we'll move on to our item number 3, which is a consent items. It's consent item number 3A, which is approval of the meeting minutes from July 29 of 2025, and meeting minutes of 3B, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from August 5th, 2025. Anyone like to poll or make some amendments?
And Mr. Mayor, I have changes to both sets of minutes. For the council, I distributed a sheet that has this. On the July 29th minutes, in the initial paragraph, I propose striking the text Council Member Mayor Kurt Osler and replacing it with the text Mayor Kurt Osler. And also in that initial paragraph, I propose striking the text Council Member Kevin Tams and replacing it with the text Library Board Member Kevin Tams. Moving on to the August 5th minutes, In the last paragraph on page 3 of the minutes, under item 3A, PO zone text amendment, the draft minutes record that Liz Rice asked if the Planning Commission had proposed to allow 5% of the buildings to have flat roofs. According to the video, her exact wording was, "Are you going with 50% flat roofs or are you going with 75?" I therefore propose striking the text. She asked if the Planning Commission had proposed to allow 5% of the buildings to have flat roofs, and replacing it with the text, she asked if the current proposal is to allow 50 or 75% of a building's roof to be flat. And I did check in with Stephanie on all of these, and she has taken a look at them and is okay with the changes.
Anything else on those consent items? If there isn't, I'll be open for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the consent agenda with the changes mentioned.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Doug, second by Scott. Do we have electronic voting up?
I hope so.
Okay, we'll go ahead and go to vote. I don't know, Kim, are you online by any chance? We found out that Kim was not going to be able to join us, but she was thinking of being online. It does not appear she's on. So we only have 4 council members that will be voting. Kim Riddell is absent. So that passes 4-0. Okay, we'll now move on to our only action item. We have an action item 4A, which is the resolution of the grass field use policy, and that will be Jay Mumman that will give us that update.
All right. This is very similar to the baseball policy that we did a few months ago. And so in the interest of not taking you through a long presentation again for something you're already rather familiar with, I wanted to bring to you the proposed fee changes. This is all redlined so that you can see what we were proposing to change. We no longer do the Cedar Hills City Recreation League, so that's being struck. Grass fields that can be rented out. We're taking Wimbledon South off of there because it is not a suitable field for having a restroom, not even porta potties. We're also, you can see the word Town Center Meadows has been added there so that it's clear which one what we're talking about, which is the fields just over this way. We have removed the nonprofit rate as we did with the baseball, and we've raised everything by $5, so it's gone from $30 to $35 for games. Practices have gone from $15 to $20, and we're also proposing for all-day rental to be $300 to match the rate for baseball all-day rentals as well. Any thoughts, questions on this? Any other further direction?
So let me ask you on the, like, reading through the policy, that if they're like you have your grass fields, I guess it's only on these fields they have to pay the $20 an hour.
Yes.
It's not on any of the other open space
Yes.
fields. Just, okay, just want to make sure.
Any other fields? So basically any field that has a parking lot and has the ability, either has permanent restrooms or temporary restrooms could be brought in, are subject to this rental policy. And one thing that council said they didn't want, and so we've put this in the policy, is not bringing in portable restrooms into neighborhood parks where you would have restrooms in a neighborhood subject to mischief and things like that. So
There does not appear to be any questions on that.
Where you have field use policy updated and you slashed out April, will that have another month put in there to replace April? At the bottom of each page. Field use policy updated, it said April, but you scratched out April, but it's not replaced.
it must not be showing up correctly then. It must have cut off. It'll say it was updated October of 2025.
Very good.
So, sorry, the copy that I have, it was showing up, so I wasn't aware of that. I'm sorry, Ron.
Any other questions you have at all for Jay?
Yeah, I do. So these increases have just been kind of from general discussion, or we're trying to, the $300 to make it equal to the new baseball field, or?
Yes, we raised the baseball field rates based off of how much surrounding communities are charging for their fields. And so we raised those by $5 to match, American Fork, Pleasant Grove, and some of those other cities. And we're doing likewise with these as well.
So tell me about the 2 soccer fields in Highland Family Park. You can reserve those? I thought we were always keeping those open.
I believe the soccer fields could be reserved.
Right. I mean, it's listed here as if they could be. So you got 2 soccer fields, so somebody could reserve one of them all day for $300?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So someone that would do that would be a league or someone coming in, I assume?
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it anticipated when we look at a daily rental or things that way, that we're going to have staff present when we're doing rentals like this? Or is this, like if there's leagues that are renting a full day or things, do we need to have staff present on those Saturdays or Fridays on the planning?
I wouldn't anticipate, it would just be kind of a prep pre the game to, if they wanted us to do some striping, right, which they paid for. But, and that might be just an awareness to our staff who are there that, hey, you might need to do an extra garbage run that day, but I wouldn't anticipate needing a staff member there the entire day. It's more the pre with the striping, the extra garbage and the extra maintenance we'll need to do for a hardware like that. To Councilmember Smith's question, or maybe what I'm wondering you're thinking about, if a family wants to go and play a game there, that's not a concern. It's just if you want exclusive access to that field, guaranteed that you are going to be able to use it, you need to pay for a rental for it.
And that's all day?
For the all-day use there. But there's an hourly rental rate
But you could
as well.
rent it for $20 an hour, because most teams are not going to need the whole day.
No, only if you're doing a tournament or something like that.
And
So
I think,
I guess the question is why wouldn't you rent it by the hour?
yeah.
Because you could rent it for 15 hours for what it costs you to rent it all day. Usually it's cheaper when you rent it all day. I was just curious where we have $20 an hour and then $300 for a day, because that's 15 hours, isn't it?
That's for practices. If you're talking about games, which it seems to me the more likely case that somebody would be doing a day rental. It's still not, it's in the neighborhood of 8.5, 9 hours probably.
But that's if you're having a game all day long?
Yeah, so the
or-
games are at $35 an hour, daily
Right.
rental's $300, and the practice is at $20.
Teams don't generally reserve a field all day for practice. It would only
Right.
be for
Now, when
games.
is government agencies, are we thinking of schools there, or what are we thinking is a government agency? The schools?
Schools, other cities, if they, for whatever reason, need spillover for a tournament that might be happening in their city, I'm not sure. Those would usually be something,
So we're charging our residents more than we do government agencies. Because that's quite a break, from $35 an hour to $5 an hour. If it's another city that needs our facilities that our residents have paid for.
Is this what we're seeing other cities are doing, or is this something we've kind of contemplated?
this was in the policy already, and there was no direction to change it, so.
I'd say it's really rare for
to-
like other cities to be wanting it. I think more like Mountain Ridge Park, or not Park, junior high, like has on occasion wanted to rent our fields,
that makes
things
sense.
like that.
But not other cities.
I'd say that would be rare.
And they
I mean,
don't-
really, in that point, we could have, if it's a league who's trying to rent from Pleasant Grove, the league could just contact us, right? And then they pay the hourly rate that any other entity
But
would.
if a city doesn't, and they have some of their own insurance policies that might, I assume would come in, we don't require insurance when they rent, correct?
The council asked us to remove that
Yeah,
requirement.
we removed that during the last discussion.
So I'm kind of just going back to what I was saying. If you can rent for a game $35 an hour, and you can rent for practices for $20 an hour, Why would anybody pay $300 for the day?
Maybe just so they know they have it booked out for the whole day, because that would start, when does the day start, from 8 to 8 or
As long
7
as
to
the park is open.
Yeah.
So it
It might be
depends on the season.
discouraging people from doing that unless they really need it all day. We'd rather you take your block and then get off the field so other people can use it.
That,
So is that the purpose of this? Because I just can't imagine anybody's going to pay $300.
You don't get the bulk rate, you get to pay more if you just need 5 hours. So we'd rather you just say these 5 hours and then
So
let someone
5
else on the
hours for
field.
practice would be $100. For the other, what's 100 and?
175.
Yeah.
And then, Councilmember Smith brought up a good question about would we leave something open for someone to be able to go play, like at the Highland Family Park? That was probably a discussion, there was an early on discussion when we were designing Highland Family Park about actually having a soccer, like surf soccer coming and actually do a large donation for those fields. And then we would, we want to make sure it stays open, they're not the only ones using. So I think this is not looking at just one user, it's multiple users. And the way that I look at Highland Family, or even a lot of these parks, there is usually a little area off the side that if someone still wants to throw a Frisbee or football, there's still areas in the park, specifically Highland Family, which would be large enough to probably do that. But how many fields do we have over at the, I guess it would be the fields over by Lone Peak High School?
Depends on the age level.
So that's Lone Peak East
and
and
the
West.
size that they need.
Okay.
Some of them can be oriented vertically, and others horizontally to fit more in if you've got super junior leagues.
So council, look
There's
at
quite a few.
the fees. Is there any, are we okay with that? Are we, ready to make a motion on that?
I actually have one question about the fees that I didn't think about it before, but Aaron, you were probably thinking about the baseball field when you were talking about striping, but do we offer striping on the soccer fields?
Striping for soccer.
There's no fee for it, there's no discussion of it. Do we?
Do we have, if we have the equipment for it?
I assumed it has to be striped somehow.
having been a coach, it does.
That's a great, you're right. I mean, I think I was thinking about baseball and just assuming that we did the same for this. So I don't know if we traditionally really have. Have we, Chris, to your knowledge, striped for soccer?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not aware of us ever striping.
We've kind of left it up to the leagues themselves to do that,
Yeah.
so.
So
I
they'll
mean,
come and stripe.
if council chooses to approve as is, basically, we won't have a striping fee, but then I guess we could inquire if it makes sense to add that in, we could come back and do that,
If it becomes an issue. Okay.
That's a good
That's
point.
with the way we've changed it, additions like that are very easy to make now.
Well, I recommend that we explore it, because to me, having coached, I've never been on a field that wasn't striped, so.
So let me, Aaron, walk me through this. So on Saturday, when we were having a lot of rain, there's a question that came up that was not safe to have people probably playing on the baseball diamond. Either it was going to get too muddy to be able to hurt our fields, or that someone could get hurt based on how the conditions were. So we made a decision, it was made by Josh, to cancel all the games. Would we then refund the money here? Or would we move it forward for them to be able to book at a later date?
There is a cancellation policy. I don't remember it off the top of my head. It's you get a full refund within a certain number of days ahead of the reservation. And
Is it them canceling, or is it we have to cancel? Does it make sense? Because that's the other thing. Let's
Yeah,
assume
if
this
we-
Saturday we're going, okay, it's rained a tenth of an inch. They're going, well, we don't want to have the kids out there playing. Well, that's them canceling versus us saying, well, you still can play on the field.
The proposed policy says that renters will not be charged for hours that were unused due to inclement weather.
Okay.
So
they-
it appears that
they get to
either
choose.
we can tell them, no, you can't use it, or they can decide.
Has that
And
been
in
a big
either
issue?
case.
Has that been a big issue, Deanna?
I think we've tried to be friendly to them, right? These entities who are booking out, like, they'll book out, every Tuesday for 3 months, right? We just try to be friendly to them because they're paying a large rate, so I haven't heard that it's been a big issue.
I mean, but I think the question was more about when we should be canceling games, not about when other people cancel
Well,
games.
I think it was
that,
kind of both, when we do, how do we handle it, and things that way,
So I know that Josh went and checked the fields in the morning, right, and decided you can play, and then around noon, he said, all right, you're done at this point. You can't play on the fields anymore from a safety and a field damage concern. Should we have been more aggressive? I guess, sorry, what is your question, Councilmember Bills?
that was really my question, is I was just wondering how the decision was made.
I know that he went out and said, okay, in the morning there was no standing water, so he felt like it was okay, but by noon that there was. And so at that point, he said that the fields can no longer be used.
If a group has lightning come in, I would hope that we would honor their request
Yeah,
without us
absolutely.
having to be the ones that say, no, you can't use it. They could say, no, we're not going to use it because of the lightning potential, and we would honor that and refund.
Yeah, absolutely. We try to be favorable to the organizations. We don't want to be unfair to them.
So to piggyback on Councilmember Bill's question, who's make this decision? I know we had Josh do it this Saturday, but is there a person designated every day of the week that says, hey, this is how we counsel, or over the weekend?
I think that's something that we need to explore long-term. Right now, I think tell me if I'm wrong, Chris, but it's Josh, right? Luckily, Josh lives close, but Josh goes on vacation, so we need to have backup plans, or Josh should go on vacation, let's say that. We need to have backup plans. I mentioned this to the mayor and Kim over the weekend, but I honestly think we need to explore the idea of like having a part-time field person to do field prep, to check and make a decision about whether it's able, we should cancel games or not. And maybe then Josh becomes the backup. But as we add parks and as we add buildings and facilities, like I feel like we've added more and more to Josh and made his job more recreation, where that's not necessarily what it was originally. And at some point, we just need to make sure that we're providing adequate staff to handle all of the things that we have added, right, as our city has grown. They're fantastic things, right, but we need to make sure that we're accounting for that. So I think that's something that Public Works we need to explore over this winter to decide how do we best keep up on the new demands of our wonderful park.
We do have item 14 of the underuse regulations says, as playing on wet fields causes damage over and above normal use, field usage during heavy rain or recently after a heavy rainstorm is prohibited, which is important. I know some groups like to play football or other sports with the express purpose of getting muddy, which is super fun, but also super damaging to the field. So it's important to have language like that in there.
Okay. Is there any other questions? If there are not, there is a motion attached to this.
I move that City Council approve the resolution adopting fee schedule changes for fiscal year 2025-2026 and adopting the Highland City grass field use policy and the ordinance repealing City Code 12.24.070, organized play on city parks.
Second.
I have a motion by Ron, second by Doug. I don't see any further discussion. We'll go ahead and have a vote. And that passes 4-0. We'll now move on to our expedited items, which is item number 5A, which is an action item for 10400 and 6000 West Intersection Design Award. This will be Chris Trustee, our city engineer.
And while that's coming up, I would like to highlight thanks and congratulations to Chris that, as it happens, this council meeting falls on his first year anniversary with the City of Highland.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. I appreciate
1 year.
That. 1 year today. And you guys scheduled a city council meeting just for that. I appreciate
You
that.
survived.
I survived. You survived.
We all survived.
So this is a design award for a project that the city council has set aside some funding for in this year's budget, and also we were able to get some funding through Utah County to help with this project. So we solicited some proposals for design work so that we could install curb and gutter, kind of straighten out the road, and be able to install sidewalk. This was kind of a part of an intention to help pedestrian traffic get to the schools. We have the middle school to the east, and we have the Highline Elementary to the north of there. So we sent this out to a few engineering firms, and you can see that we got back 3 different proposals that are quite different. Cross Engineering, who I have done some work with, I've done work with all 3 of these firms in the past. Consor is actually doing our Mitchell Hollow Trail design right now, and RB&G has helped us out with, in fact, the Safe Routes to School project that's just north of here. So all 3 firms have done some work in this area. The low bid on this project was $28,100. As a professional service, we don't necessarily have to go with the low bid, but I don't see any reason why we wouldn't in this case. I think they're a qualified engineer in this case, and the recommendation would be to award this to Cross Engineering Services for that $28,100. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So across the street, we have kind of curvy sidewalks and park detail or parkway detail. What do you anticipate for the new curb and sidewalk? Are we putting parkway detail? Are we putting in
I had
curvy
not anticipated
sidewalks?
putting in parkway detail, but I
Yeah.
guess that's a good question that we might have to.
Yeah, it is, because, where is the sidewalk right on the curb? I'm just curious what the plans, what you're discussing.
The plans were to install the curb and gutter and sidewalk. I think it's appropriate for us to meet the parkway detail, though, so we'll make sure that that's the way it's designed.
So, so usually with the parkway detail, I think we're leaning towards xeriscaping now.
Correct.
And then we usually put trees. Do we have funds to do that? We're finding funds for the curb, sidewalk, street improvements.
We
I'm
did
just
not
wondering about the
include
parkway
necessarily
detail.
funds for landscaping in this project. So
Uh-huh.
that's something that we might want to look at funding in an upcoming budget.
So I think it'd be good.
Do we
for
have
the-
the space to do that, similar to what's on the other side?
We should. I believe that we will. So.
Because I agree with Councilmember Smith on this, that we really need, I think, consistency, and that area kind of commands that kind of a nice feature.
But, we're trying to do xeriscaping. And then if you do trees, trees are minimum of $500 a piece, oftentimes much more. So I just wondered where the budget would come to do that sort of stuff. So it'd be good to just see the plan and what you recommend.
Yeah.
And what the increased costs will be. Because I think it's great, we're fixing the road, we're getting curb, sidewalk. It leads up to the elementary school. It'll look great, but I'd like to know where we're going to get the funding.
We'll bring that back to the city council. Part of this will be an engineer's estimate on costs. So once we have that, we can look at it and see what costs might be for additional landscaping.
Well, and as we also look on that corner, that is owned by the LDS Church, that little park. I don't know what their anticipation, if they were going to be able to park there, because if you have parkway detail, it might be harder for them to park. Now, they have a parking lot across the street, but I was going, what was the understanding with the LDS Church there, and how much ground they were going to allow us to be able to use?
As far as parking, off-street parking goes, that wasn't really discussed. We just asked for to extend the existing right-of-way through this area, and so that's how we determine what area we got from the church.
I would be interested, before we have somebody do design work, in understanding what our anticipated cost difference would be with the parkway detail. It seems to me that it would be wonderful to have parkway detail through there, but immediately, once we connect up on the east side, we don't have parkway detail.
Right.
And there's just an area of a few blocks right there that does on the south side. If there's a significant cost difference, and I'm anticipating there probably is, that feels like someplace that we might decide that, okay, we're okay with just a sidewalk, and let's save the money and either not spend it or spend it someplace else.
I'd be happy to bring some cost comparisons back to the council.
So I think he's talking kind of logically there, but to do that, we have to violate city codes that we have, right? Can you make exceptions, eliminate your parkway detail? I mean, how does the developer then come and say, hey, you didn't do it here, so I don't need to do it? I think we just have to be careful that we don't set precedent and also, be consistent. So we'll have to look at that.
Certainly if the zoning is such that, yes, parkway detail is required there, then we do parkway detail. I mean, yeah, that's a great point, yeah.
Did the RFP include the scope of what we're talking about here? Because when
We didn't specifically say the
engineering,
parkway detail, so we can have that discussion with.
seems like if I were the engineering firm, I would say, oh yeah, I'll gladly do that, and it's going to cost.
It's a change order.
It's a change order.
That's how they make
So
the
we got to
money.
be careful. All I'm saying is we want to be careful.
No, listen, we all know that builders, they love change orders because that's where they get their full profit versus the bid profit.
Yep.
And so now, let me ask you, and this might be for Rob, as we go further to the west, the Pantos property that's coming in, they will have parkway detail, correct?
Correct.
So I'm just saying as we
See,
start.
so
to
that's where you get into trouble.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to be consistent, yeah.
But I think we have to see I think the engineering of how does it really function, because this is something where we have a property owner that said, yes, we'll work with you to make sure they understand what we're actually looking at too.
Right.
So, okay.
Chris, I'm trying to remember, did the 28,000 include contingency? I don't think we normally really
I
are
did
worried
not
about
add
that.
contingency to this because I thought that we just did that mostly with construction projects and not design.
Right.
So the question, is this bid going to be adequate for what we're now discussing if it's parkway detail?
I believe it should be, because when I'm thinking about the RFP, I didn't specify what the cross-section was. Before we talk or actually sign the contract, I will make sure that the consultant is aware that we are talking about the parkway detail and make sure that that's a known. But I didn't tell them it was a narrower right-of-way. I told them to meet what we had out there, so.
With that, Counselor, are you comfortable making a motion here?
I'll make that motion. I move that the Highland City Council award the design bid to Cross Engineering in the amount of $28,100 for the 10400 North, 6000 West intersection improvement project.
I'll second that.
Motion by Scott, second by Ron. We will now go to vote. That passes 4-0. We'll now move on to item number 5B, which is an action item, which is sidewalk maintenance bid award. This will also be Chris that will give us background on this.
Yeah, so we went out to Precision Cutting Concrete to ask them about fixing some sidewalks that we have in this area around the country club. They went out, they reviewed the site themselves. We asked them to look at particular issues that we've had. They came back with a cost to do some of the work that's outlined on this drawing. The cost that they had for that was $40,888.74, and that does include a 10% contingency. There's some areas within this neighborhood that it requires work that they are not able to perform. In most of those cases, trees will need to be removed, and then the entire sidewalk will need to be removed and replaced, but we'll do that as a later project. We have reached out to some of the homeowners already to let them know that we have those concerns about their trees, and we'll just move forward with those as part of our routine sidewalk maintenance.
Is most of this grinding down for
This
ADA
is
compliance?
pretty much all grinding down, and
Almost all of it.
yeah.
You did a really good job on the east side of the country club, doing that very thing, which I literally thought it would have to be replaced. I thought it'd have to be dug up and replaced, and then they were grinding away. I thought, well, good luck with that. Well, it worked, and it's a lot cheaper, a whole lot cheaper.
And they do a lot better job, I think, than when we've tried to do it ourselves
Yeah,
in-house.
it's really nice work. They've done real good work.
So Chris, the ones that are called out of scope, this way I think you're saying there's trees.
Yeah.
What is the anticipation if we're not going to fix the sidewalk because there's a tree there? What's the anticipation? Because we're going and trying to fix all the neighborhood with all their other, what is that plan?
I think it depends on how responsive the neighbors are to removing the trees. I did have that discussion with our street superintendent and said, if they don't remove these trees, do we go in and tell them that we will remove them and send them a bill? He said, the last time we did that, I never wanted to do that again. And I get that, but I guess the concern also becomes if it becomes a tripping hazard. So,
The
at some
safety,
point,
very much, we have to be sensitive to.
Yeah.
We're not going to allow it to be unsafe for
Yeah.
an extended period of time.
So far, everybody who's talked to actually has been pretty reasonable. So I think that we'll have some pretty good response. There might be some areas where we still don't have the trees removed, and we might have to just try to work on getting those residents to work with us. Yes?
So I'd just like to express my appreciation for you working on this. You did some repair work on the Alpine Highway not too far from where I live. And the neighbors that live along there wanted me to express appreciation for that. Because one of the things as a physician, and I have a lot of older patients now, I'm getting older, and one of the worst things is falls. And, and if we can do everything on the city to make our sidewalks as safe as possible, it really does save a lot of heartache and pain and suffering and healthcare expenses, because falls are devastating. I've seen people's lives change in 5 seconds. And so I appreciate your working on that. My neighborhood appreciates what you've done up there.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one, make sure I'm remembering correctly. Am I correctly recalling that we're doing a street survey, and as part of that, we're
Yes.
surveying all the sidewalks so that we'll have an idea of where really needs
Yes.
attention going forward?
Yeah, I think that's a great comment to make up. We will have LTAP coming in and doing a roads evaluation for us and also a sidewalk evaluation. We have kind of in the past gone out to neighborhoods that we feel are older, have a lot of trees, and that we get phone calls about complaints. And that's how we've kind of prioritized our sidewalk projects. But by next year, we should have that report back from LTAP. And we can look at doing it based on the evaluations that we get back, not necessarily just our own reactive gut feelings.
So my question was, why did we choose this neighborhood versus others? And you're saying because of age and so maybe because there have been a lot of concerns in this area?
Yes.
It's not because of the highest voter turnout in the city?
Not because of voter turnout
I'm
or
just wondering,
because...
this is one of our highest areas of the city. I just want to make sure it's election season.
it's one of the oldest neighborhoods.
I know.
And it actually pre-exists the city.
Yeah.
And there are people voting for me too, so I appreciate that. Just kidding.
Hey, it's election season. What's going on here? So
I'm just being funny.
I understand. I'm just kind of being facetious too. So, okay, is there any other questions before we go to vote? Okay, let's take a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the City Council approve a bid award to Precision Concrete Cutting in the amount of $40,888.74.
I'll second it.
Motion by Doug, second by Scott. Four to zero. We'll now move on to number 5C, which is resolution of surplus property. Once again, this is you, Chris.
Yeah, so we have two items on surplus sale. City policy requires us that if we ever want to surplus equipment, that we need to get approval from City Council to do that. We have the existing playground equipment in Heritage Park that we are wanting to put up for surplus so that we can replace it with some new equipment. And we also have the VGB VXU Census Drive unit that we are looking to put up for
Who's going
surplus.
to buy that? I mean, who would be interested in that? Another municipality?
Another municipality.
What is
Yeah.
it?
It's what receives the, go ahead.
Yeah, when we replaced the MXUs, this was a piece of equipment that we got for it, but we ended up changing and going with a different brand.
Now, when we replace what?
When we started to install the MXUs as part of our PI project.
Okay. So this is equipment that was in our old pressurized irrigation.
Yes.
That another municipality could purchase if they desire.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead. Well, I was hoping to get over and look at this playground. Just these pictures make it look like it's in pretty good shape.
So we have kind of a replacement program that we've implemented, and we try to replace equipment and kind of rotate it based on the age of it. Part of that has to do with the older it gets, the less safe it becomes, and it also is harder for us to find replacement parts. So this was a piece of equipment that had been marked as part of that rotation to be replaced.
Have to, is that federally mandated, state mandated, or
No.
municipal mandated?
No, I don't, and if I
probably
use
us
the
making
It's
the
best
decision.
practices?
best practices.
Okay.
Yep.
So a question had come up, and I appreciated, I think, Doug, you're the one that forwarded the question from one of the residents, is why would we not take this and put it in, because we might have older playgrounds in other areas of the city, and move this to another area? Is it because it's outdated, because of some safety issues? or-
Part of it's because it's outdated, it's not as safe, it's harder to find replacement parts for this. And I know specifically on that email that was sent out, I think they asked about replacing the equipment in Windsor Park, but that's actually next on the list to have their playground equipment replaced anyway, so.
So now let's go through, this goes out to bid for surplus. Share with, is it already disassembled, and so someone just comes and picks it up on pallets? Or are they required to come disassemble it and remove it themselves?
It's not disassembled, but I believe that we would do that and have it ready for them to pick up. I don't believe that we require them to disassemble it,
I'm just,
but they would have to pick it up.
will this be gone, is this something we have on our website? Does this go on the state website?
I believe the way the policy reads, we could put it on the state's website. That's probably the easiest way to do it. I don't know if we've ever done it on our website at all. I believe we could also put it out to auction, but I think the websites are the better way to go.
So you put it out there, it will be on the state website. If there's residents that are listening, they're interested in bidding on this, they would bid on it on the state website. And how soon would this, if this passes, would it be there, and how long would, and then if they're a winning bid, they would contact the city? I've actually had one or two residents reach out about inquiring about this.
I think we'd have it out on that website by the end of the week. So after
Then
that, they
there's a
could,
14-day bid process.
I think 14 days.
And then after that, they'd call the city and say, hey, we'll come in, we'd like to pick it up. I imagine it'd be wise for them to take pictures so they understand how to assemble it back.
Yeah. I think we'd be notified from the state surplus website who the successful bidder was, and
Okay.
then we would make arrangements for
Now,
that
you're ready for
person.
one of the most important questions as I see here. There's a little airplane, is that included?
I believe so. I believe it's all of that.
I just want to make sure, so that little airplane apparatus that rocks back and forth is included. We are surplusing it. I'm just.
The
there
mayor
will be
would
a
like to
question
bid on that
says that
separately.
airplane was- If I'm bidding and it's in the picture, is this what we're surplusing? We only the playground, or is the little
No,
airplane?
I think everything there is included.
Yeah, and we have to at least remove it from the park because it won't fit with the new playground that council approved.
Yeah.
Wasn't there also, though, something with being ADA accessible that was the reason this was on the list for replacement?
I remember there being an issue with ADA compliance at that, but I don't know that necessarily had anything to do with this equipment being removed or
I'd say
being
the other reason
replaced.
we ranged this high to be removed, and I do remember, like, when I've gone out there, there's a couple of cracks somewhere in this equipment, and I can't remember where, but another reason that it's high on the list is it's a, a community park, right? Like, it's a regional park rather than a neighborhood park, and so if you remember, we did Highland Glen, Heritage, Mitchell Hollow is also next on the list, right? Because they are older, but they're also community parks and have high usage because of that. So those are other reasons they scored highly. But to your point, Councilmember Bills, when we put in a new playground, though, we have to make it not necessarily everything ADA accessible, but at least the entry to get to the playground has to be ADA accessible.
Okay. Any questions on this further? Okay. there a motion?
I move that the City Council approve the resolution declaring the indicated items as surplus and authorize the sale and disposal of these items.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Ron, second by Scott. Now, we're on tap to be done by 8. Now, notice Kim's not here. We can tell Kim that we got done by 8. Should have been the one pushing us.
And just for the record, if we do not get done by 8, we all know who just jinxed us.
Sorry, that passed 4-0. Now, moving on to item number 6A. Okay, we have the Lone Peak Fire Assessment discussion. They have myself down as that and our city administrator, Aaron Wells. I believe we'll start with Aaron and then different questions that might come up. This, for the public, the council has been having a lot of discussions about the Lone Peak Fire District or Lone Peak District. This is to kind of help the public maybe come up to speed about some discussions that's been going on at the Lone Peak Public Safety meetings, as well as some discussions we've been having with Alpine City, who is our partner in Lone Peak. So with that, we'll now turn some time over to Aaron Wells, our city administrator.
Can I ask a point of clarification? So are we trying to get the public up to steam, or do we want the public to be steamed about it?
We'll see what
Okay.
happens after we're done.
Yes, because we know the discussion that's been
might
going
have to
on.
spray us to get it
Yeah,
all
okay,
back down.
sounds good.
Let's talk about fiscal years while we're at it, Mayor.
Oh, okay. Let's get some fun things. We're trying to be done by 8.
Okay, so to the mayor's point, I'm going to share some information. Council, I know that many of you know this, but this with the intent of educating the public and any potential future people who will be influential in this decision. So could you hit the next slide for me? Jay or Ron or whoever, or Rob, whoever's got it. Okay, so Lone Peak Public Safety, it's largely funded by each city, right? There are some other revenue sources that the district uses, such as grants, our interest earnings, and then charges for services, mainly from our ambulance billing. So whatever is left over of the budget after those other revenue sources is split amongst the cities. During the 2026 budget season, we had a lot of conversations, the board had a lot of conversations about does the allocation to the cities make sense? Is it fair? Ultimately, the budget was approved by the boards and then, of course, the cities, but the motion, particularly about the budget from the board level, says we'll approve this budget, which includes adding an additional firefighter position, but that firefighter position cannot be filled until we adjust the formula. And so that was what was ultimately approved as part of the budget discussion. So here we are talking about the formula.
And again, just for education maybe,
Yeah.
when we say that we're adding one additional firefighter position, is it 3 actual
3
positions that
because
get
we have-
added, which yields a bump of 1 across 24/7?
So
Exactly.
what's being asked is we have, are we calling them battalions? We have 3 different, is it A, B, and C shifts? I
Shifts.
guess it's shifts.
Yeah, there's 3 different platoons, so when we add one position, it's just adding one more riding position per day. Typically, that would mean 3 full-time firefighters. In this case, we're doing it with 2 full-time and 1 part-time position.
Now, Aaron, I don't know, are you going to be going through a little bit why we're having the discussion a little bit?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And fill in any gaps that I miss, Mayor. So next slide. Let's talk about how does the staffing currently work, essentially. So, and I'm going to talk about our combat staff. So these are the firefighters that automatically roll out on calls, right? That does not include our administrative staff. So currently, when we're fully staffed, right now we have 8 spots, and so at this point, the fire chief has decided how is best to do staffing. Based on his expertise. And so right now there are 4 in the Alpine Station and 4 in the Highland Station, or there should be whenever we are fully staffed. And the reason that we've set it 4 is that's what the minimum is needed in order to enter a burning structure. If there is a reason to enter a structure that's burning, you need 2 in and 2 out. And so you need 4 to be there for that first initial attack. And so 4 and 4 is how we staff.
Am I correctly recalling that the staffing level of 4 is also what we need in order to send both fire and ambulance from the same station?
Yes. So we respond 4 on a medical call as well. So if we don't have 4 at in one of the cities, then we supplement that with the ambulance or an engine from another city.
So what Doug is asking is right now, if there's 4 per station and there's an emergency call, each station can, if there's 4 at that station, they can usually handle that medical call on their own without having another station. But my understanding is once we drop, and you're going to talk about the staffing where 70% of the time goes to 7%, the concern is when we see Highland now down at 3, we always need to rely on a truck to then come out of Alpine to meet us to that standard of at least 4, correct, Chief?
Yeah, we bring the ambulance out of Alpine, but yes.
Just go ahead and Aaron, you can.
Yeah, well, real quick on the 70%, the reason that that's 70% is that illness and vacations of the 8 people at 70% of the time, we're down to 7. When you have 8
Mathematically
full-time.
speaking, we need 10 positions per day to be above 8 to from a
keep it at
mathematical
8.
perspective. It would be easier, well, not easier, but it would be a little bit different if we didn't have the part-time component. Where we do run 2 part-time positions a day, there's a part-time variable that is neither sick or vacationing. They just maybe aren't working that day. So that's also a component.
So for our Sky Ridge friends out there, you're looking for 3 items on our agenda that might be, this is what takes up about 70% of our budget is going to be public safety. And so this is a really important aspect for our city. And this is why we've been spending a lot of time on this. But we'll go ahead and go back to Aaron to go forth.
No, thank you. And I'll say that the staff really tries to be conscious, right? Like, there's only allowed to be 1 full-time person off per day, like when they're asking for vacations, because we want to be fully staffed, right? That's the goal. And so we minimize that, and we actually even incentivize them to not take their days off. They get paid out if they don't take their holidays. And so we try to do our best to stay at fully staffed, but we do allow 1 person per day to take a vacation. And then sometimes people or their children get sick, right? And they need to stay home. And then we have that part-time variability. So because of all of those factors, 70% of the time we only have 7 combats on. And at that time, we staff 4 in Alpine and 3 at Highland. And that's due ultimately to the greater risk that Alpine has. They are further away from mutual aid, right? We have American Fork and Lehigh who can all come to us pretty quickly, and Alpine, whereas Alpine just has us, right? Everybody else is passing through us to get to them. So from a medical and a fire standpoint, Alpine is more risky than we are.
So what mutual aid means, when there's a call, we will have that come from another station or another city will respond into our city to help us back up. A mutual aid from the, anyway, I'm sorry, Aaron.
Or vice versa. Us
But what you're saying
responding.
is Alpine, because of the further away from mutual aid, because of maybe some greater risk with some wild land or just things, the chief has allotted saying, because of that risk, we're going to always keep 4 in Alpine, and it drops Highland then down to 3. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. What that equates to is roughly, if you were just looking at combat, Alpine gets 55% of the staff and Highland gets 45%. And those are rough numbers, right, depending on the, are we at fully staffed or at the 7 staffing. So that's what that equates to, which when you look at the next slide, you'll see why that's a kind of a consternation for us because, just kidding. I couldn't decide how to order these slides, and I did it a different way. Okay, so looking at what Chief Patton proposed and the board approved as as our next level of staffing. So going up to 9 positions, which at that time we would have 4 at Alpine again because of that minimum for a fire attack and minimum to respond on a medical call. But then 5 would come down to Highland, and that's because of the fact that we have higher call volume, right? We have highways that run through our city, we have more people, and so we just innately have more call volume in Highland.
And just to clarify, Aaron, this says proposed combat staffing at the top. This is not proposed, this is already approved by everybody. It has just not, it has been funded, the hires haven't been made.
So it's halfway proposed, halfway, right? It's funded, but we are not hired for that position yet.
Yep.
Yes. So if that position were then hired, if the board gave approval for then, if when we got down to, when we were losing, when somebody wasn't on and we were down to 8, there would be 4 and 4 at each station. And we think most of the time that's where we should be at.
And we still have the 70% that factors into that
I
5.
should say, most of the time we'll either be at 9 or at 8. I don't know if it's going to be 70% of the time because we really don't know until we get all of those positions funded, right? So mathematically, to Chief Patton, what he said earlier, mathematically we actually need 10 to always confirm that we have 8, but we are hoping that getting to 9, I know will be a step in the right direction at least, and we'll see what that means at that point.
I think Chief Patton, do you want to give some input here? Or you? Okay, then we'll move on. That's a sign.
We've got to do baby steps. Can't jump to 10 before we get to 9.
Absolutely.
No, that's probably, the board has kind of recommended that too. Chief Patton, do you have some comments?
Maybe. I would expect it to be somewhere in that 70% range that we would probably be down to 8. Keep in mind that, I mean, when we're looking at percentages, and I mean, we have our days where we maybe are running a 6 here and there, and you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, we're still gonna potentially have our 7 days, and, you know, if we can line a storm up, sometimes they happen, so.
Yeah. But, I mean, overall, we're looking that we would have, Highland at that point would have at least, most likely, at least the minimum, or not the minimum, 50%, right, of the combat staffing at any time. So we don't know exactly what that percentage would be until we make it happen, but above the 50% at least at that point. All right, now that will make more sense on the next slide. When we talk about how do we pay for Lone Peak, right? We talked about that it's split between the cities. The current formula, which is outlined in the interlocal agreement between Highland City and Alpine City, says that, okay, the first 10% is split 50-50. Thinking about the base cost, right, is what I am assuming the board at the time, or no, the cities at the time were thinking there. So the first 10% is split 50-50. From there, 45% is looked at based on the population, and 45% is looked at equivalent residential units. And ERUs, what that means is we look at the number of buildings in the city and we try to equate commercial down to residential. So for every 10,000 square feet of commercial equals 1 residential unit. And so it's trying to, so this formula currently is looking at, okay, base plus the population component and the number of buildings that are in any city.
However, if there's a residential unit that's 15,000 square foot, it's still 1 residential unit.
Correct. Whether we're talking about a townhome in Ridgeview or a very large home that's being built in Three Falls and Alpine, they're the exact same, 1 for 1. What that results is that that formula results in Highland paying 65% of the cost and Alpine paying 35%. And I believe that's where the board consternation ultimately came from, is we're getting less than 50% of the staffing at this point, but yet we're paying 65% of the cost.
So looking at this, Alpine pays, and I'm just being, what we're looking at is we look at the staffing, Alpine pays 35%, but currently they're getting 55% of the combat staff. Highland pays 65%, only getting 45% of the combat staff. Exactly. And that is where we've had some concerns.
And to say it's a concern is kind of an understatement.
Well, it's unfair to our
serious
residents.
concern.
It's actually
it's unfair to our residents.
Yeah.
They're being taxed.
And we have risk. But the thing is, we're paying, you're hearing me get emotional on this. We pay the money for the staffing, but we are getting the less staffing and have our residents at a higher risk because of it.
And that's unfair to our residents.
And I know that. That's why we're working through it.
And one additional clarification, just for folks on this screen, that the allocation we're talking about here is strictly for fire. There are 2 other portions, the administration and the police, that go into our full cost for the district, and they have different allocation formulas.
You're absolutely right. And thank you for that clarification. While the board has talked about other parts of the other formulas, I should say, the other formulas, you're right. They've been focused mostly on fire because of the addition of the staffing, really, is what's driven
However,
this.
as Doug brings it up, we looked at the administration a couple years back, and I'm just going to be very, very transparent. When we got the numbers back, so Highland City mainly handles the administration of the district. When the costs came back, there was pushback from the Alpine representatives at the time, and we negotiated less than what we believed the cost was to try to be a good partner here. And so it's kind of hard when we keep giving in. We have a partner that's paying 35%, but yet they're trying to control the 50-50. That's where some consternation's coming. It's just, we feel like we've been very flexible on the administration cost in trying to make sure that's equitable or even more fair because it's our administration that's taking care of it. But yet when it comes back, there's some feelings there. It's just
Feelings, I think that's a good word for it right now, Mayor. Okay. Could you move forward for me, please, Jay? Thank you. So what happened is, based on direction of the board, staff agreed, okay, let's get on the same page about what variables we could look at when we are deciding what should the formula look at. If we're going to change the formula, if the ILA is going to be amended, what variables, just so that we are all on the same page. So these are all of the formulas that we looked at. First was, again, that base cost idea, right? Should we do some kind of an even split between the cities? Maybe a different number than that 10% that it is charged now. Population, how we've defined that is what the most recent census is, plus the growth that we've experienced in our city, right? The building permits plus the average, or times the average household size. Equivalent residential units, we spoke about that, so it's the number of units that are in our city, both non-residential and residential combined. Taxable value, thank you, sorry, I've gotten cold. Taxable value, so thinking about what, essentially, if we were a district, if we were a taxing district, such as Unified Fire, or at least some of what Unified Fire does, it's based on taxable value, right? Because it's a property taxing, they're a property taxing entity. And so just looking at what the state gives us for a taxable value. Market value.
Can we jump back to ERUs for just a second? Because it just occurred to me that I think I know how it works, but I'm not positive. Do ADUs factor at all into ERUs? Okay.
Did you say ADUs?
Yeah.
Oh.
accessory dwelling units. To accessory dwelling units, if they have accessory dwelling units, it does not equate anything.
Right. It's rooftops. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But it may on taxable value down the road. I mean,
That's true.
We're all adjusting because it's new to Highland, but
So,
it may.
Can I just ask so the taxable value is basically what the county assessor goes through periodically and says your homes are worth. So because Alpine has a higher certified tax rate than Highland does, and does that play any role into it?
Yeah, so when we look at the taxable value, we did, yes, Highlands compared to Alpines overall. But yes, it's based on the county assessor.
Just to make sure Highland has a taxable value of $3,265,000,000. Alpine has a taxable value of $2,331,000,000. So Highland still has a higher taxable value.
Well, we're a bigger city.
Yes, and so that makes sense.
That makes, yeah.
Market value, so taxable value versus market value, they're similar, but taxable value gives your primary residence, you get that discount. Whereas market value is just the market value that the county has assigned to your property. It's not necessarily what actually would happen, but their rough estimate of if you were to sell your property, what it would be worth.
But if this were funded, it would be funded by taxable value.
If Lone Peak were a taxing district, it would be done by taxable value.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Call volume is the other data point that we looked at, and so we took in a 5-year average of all of the calls that Lone Peak, that were generated in our city boundaries, and so that includes our city's boundaries. So that includes our 911 calls, non-emergency, as well as what we call we initiated them calls, including traffic stops. And so we took a 5-year average of all of those calls as well between the two cities.
And again, we have discussed this, I should know, but I don't. That when this talks about officer or firefighter initiated calls, is the call volume an aggregate across the district, or is it specific to fire when we're talking about fire funding?
We looked at just fire calls for this formula. So we separated out police calls versus fire calls. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. moving on. And so what did we actually come up with? And so, just for your information, how do these variables look when we look across cities? So, for example, population. So if you added Highland and Alpine together, so Alpine has 32% of the population, Highland has 68. And you can see that across the different variables that we just discussed. So that one's the lowest, for example, whereas taxable value, how do you spell that word? Taxable value, Highland has 58%, Alpine has 42%, if you looked at it as a whole.
So it's much different than the 35-65.
It is. Okay, so what happened is we had a meeting where Alpine brought some proposals, Highland brought some proposals, and some new ones came out of that meeting. I'll tell you up front, Highland ultimately rejected both of Alpine's proposals as we discussed through the meeting, but I wanted to, for education purposes, give you a heads up as to what it was. So Alpine came up with two different proposals. The first was a three-way split looking at ERUs, call volume, and taxable value, both at 33 1/3%. And so ultimately what that would have meant was Alpine paying $132,000, I'm rounding, $132,000 more for their assessments. Ultimately, that was rejected by the board members, and I'll talk more about it, but it's because we decided it made sense probably to include some kind of a base component here. Proposal number 2, if we go on to the next slide, did a 4-way split. It added, what do we do now? So ERUs, call volume, taxable value, and population. So added in the population component. And that would have resulted in about a $69,000 increase for Alpine, and then the subsequent decrease for Highland overall. Highland's proposal, we've talked about for some time. If you go to the next slide, to Councilmember Campbell's point, has all been about taxable value. So the board has talked about, like, we need to be thinking about this as a district. And so Highland said, okay, well, let's think about it as a district from a funding standpoint. So again, if we were a taxing entity and they were doing it 100% based on taxing authority, then it would be based on taxable value. And so when you put that in, it results in Alpine paying about $281,000 more, getting to a 58-42 split.
One of the reasons, this is the Highlands proposal, when we kept meeting with Alpine, we kept hearing in each of the meetings, hey, we need to function as a district. We need to act as a district. We need to look as a district. And so this is when we looked at what other districts in the state, they do it based off of property tax value. So those, if you're wondering why this was Highlands thing, that once again was a negotiating, trying to say, okay, what we heard from Alpine, we are a district, we quack like a district, squeak like a district, now act like a district. So we said, then here's your proposal as a district.
And quite honestly, this is the reason I can support this, is that I can defend this to the residents. It's defensible. The other proposals, I can't defend those. It's like, no, we're going to supplement Alpine because we have in the past. No, we're not. This is defendable. I can talk to a resident. I can explain it in simple terms that make sense. If we were a taxable entity, this is the way it would be. Let's operate as a district, and this is what it comes out, and it is what it is. So,
and let's talk, because we're going to see that going, hold it, we're still, some will say supplement, realize that we still have a higher call volume. The benefit of being a district is that there's going to be times, and Chief, you made a comment, is it about 8 to 10% where there's double calls at the same time? Did you ever look at that? Is it 8, do you know what the percentage?
I don't know exactly. We're right in that, maybe 8 to 12 range.
And so having another station in our district or it gives us an advantage. It does, and I would assume, occasionally when I watch it, I assume a lot of the double calls are in the Highland. It doesn't mean that Alpine doesn't have double calls. There's been times I've seen 3 calls at the same time. And surprisingly, we give a lot more mutual aid than we receive. I mean, even this morning, I saw that we were, here we have Lehigh that has 4 fire stations, and yet I'm seeing this morning that Lehigh has 2 trucks going, and yet we're bringing 2 trucks on a, I don't know if that ended up being a fire, there that was down in the, down by the Cabela's area or what it was, but we give a lot of mutual aid also the other way. So, Chief, any input that way?
We do. I mean, on the call this morning and this afternoon, the one in American Fork and the one in Lehigh. Lehigh this morning had 2 calls already going when that fire went out. But that's essentially how we operate as far as mutual aid. We're gonna send the closest units that are gonna get there the fastest and do the work. Typically, and it was today on both of the fire calls that were outside of our city, we never made it outside of the city limits.
Before they called back.
Before, you know, that first arriving unit gets there, and it's not a big event. It's not you know, the house isn't on fire. And then they're gonna cancel everybody else, but it's advantageous to get everybody headed that direction. We wanna be good neighbors. We only have 2 fire stations, and we're way less manpower than the stations around us. So when it comes to us having a fire, not to mention we have, you know, structures that are 10 times bigger than some of the structures in these cities, we need the help. So we're gonna, of course, be a good neighbor, and we're gonna go down and help a 4-station department, because when it's our turn, we can't do it without them.
But that also comes in as we look at the district. It is beneficial to the city to have another station that we can, you know, instead of us, okay, let's assume we go on our own. Yeah, we might be funding for five or six, because if you look at our funding methods, but yet there's a benefit because you have that double coverage. That's the same true for Alpine. There's a great benefit by being in the district. And so our goal is always to work through and try to keep the district together, but we also need a participating partner. So anyway, Aaron?
So this was the formula that we proposed, and what we've kind of told Alpine at this point is, you know, tentatively our council seems supportive of this, but it's a limited time offer ultimately, because if we'll go to the next slide, other proposals that, as we discussed this in the board meeting, one thing that came out is, look, we're sharing staff costs, combat staff 50-50 at this point. Should that cost, I mean, shouldn't there be some kind of a base cost, right? Because I think a lot of the conversation was Alpine was interested in using population or ERUs or something like that, or call volume, but what Alpine, or what I heard Highland expressing is then you've got to share those base costs, right? Because a fire station, fire department, I should say, a lot of the costs are just, whether or not if we have 0 calls, if we have 1,000 calls, a lot of those costs are the same, because you just have to pay people to be here to respond to if we have a call. And so the conversations dealt with, okay, you've got to have, if we're going to look at call volume or anything else, you've got to share those base costs more evenly. So there were 2 different options mainly discussed. One wasn't settled on, and we'll talk about why, is, okay, so what if we did the first 50% of the budget is just split 50-50. And so, and then the other 50% of the assessments were done based on population. What that resulted in, it's very similar to actually the taxable value, thank you, proposal, in that it's about $262,000. So that's very similar to the market value. But if we'll go to the next slide, the other one we talked about when we looked at base is, should it be 50%, or what is that magic number? We talked about 50%, we also talked about 81%. And the reason we talked about 81 is when you look at the current budget and account for salary and benefits, right, the fixed costs of this fixed staffing costs of the fire department, 81% of the budget is staff. And so, again, if we are splitting staff 50-50, should that base cost actually be the 81% overall? And so when you plug in 81% as the base cost and then just attribute that last 19% to population, it does result in a sizable increase. So we're talking about almost $500,000 for Alpine City that they would need to increase, and we would decrease.
I mean, we still have the staff cost.
Absolutely.
If each station has 4 and 4 in it, that's the real cost.
This is actually based on actual cost. I mean, what does it cost to operate in Alpine? What does it cost to operate? And staff is the major cost. It's 81% of the budget. This represents a very fair. So for me, we've got the other option that's quite a bit less. They have a certain time frame. Yes or no. If it's no, then this is the only option, because it's the actual cost.
So can I point out something, though? I think, and I really like this discussion. I appreciate all these options that are being presented, and I think the goal should be to keep the district together the best we can. But I think there's always a problem trying to factor in population, because it seems like there's always disagreement in growing cities what the real population is. I mean, what do you base it on? So in our citizens budget that's just been produced for 2026, we're estimating the population of Highland to be just somewhat over 21,000. If you talk to the mayor, when he calculates it out, it's 23,000. And I'm not saying who's right or wrong, but I don't know how, that's a 10% difference. And so the question is how do you figure out the population in two growing cities? In what year do you say this is the population, So I think it's better to do actually taxable value, in my opinion, because when you start factoring in population, I think it's difficult to say exactly what the population is. Yeah.
No, that makes sense, because we're doing our best to estimate, but it's just an estimate. And it's not exactly accurate because we do it based on, okay, you've pulled a building permit, right? And now we're applying a family living there, but that family may or may not be living there at this point, right?
Well, what we
Because it takes them some time.
to get to 23,000, everyone goes, how do you get to 23? You're going to take the number of homes we have in Highland, and the last census said we had 4.1 residents per house, and you times that, 23,000. I mean, that's how you're doing it. Now, if you go off the census, we're still back in that 21 or 20,000 somewhat. Is that right, David? Is that kind of?
Yeah, that's exactly how we've calculated for the assessments. We took the 2020 census population number, and then we take permit information from both of the cities, and then multiply the number of permits for each year by the average household size from the 2020 census. And then that brings us to the current year estimated population. So if our average household size or Alpine's average household size has changed from 2020, that estimate is not going to be correct. Or if we've had more, multifamily housing that has fewer people, that could affect it as well.
So
And we do. We have Ridgeview.
Yeah,
and I promise you there's not 4 people living in every one of those
So
houses.
as you look at also, everyone goes, why is things starting to get a little out of kilter? Well, as we talked about in a work session and in our thing, Highland was actually in the top 10 of growth. And so if you go look, over since 2020 till now, we have added, I know Ridgeview has, 689 units plus the others.
When it's finished, yeah.
Once it's finished, but we have other developments going on and going, we have had great growth. Alpine has stayed more level and flat, and that's why I think you're starting to see some other separations. But yet, our staffing is the same, but we're just paying more for staffing. It's Highland paying more because of that, but we didn't really staff any different based off the population.
But
that's why you use population and go, we're not staffing different off the population.
But it just seems taxable value is a little fair.
And that's what I propose. Go ahead, I think Aaron, you have a.
I actually am, on the one hand, inclined to agree, Scott, that population isn't the best option to choose because the data we have lags up to 10 years, and then you have
Right.
However, given that we've come up with this is how we're going to do it, if using population is something that is important from Alpine's standpoint, and otherwise it works for us, I'm okay with like this base plus population. Population wouldn't be my first choice, but I would be okay with that.
But is Alpine going to support that when you're going to increase their fees by $500,000?
They're not going to go for proposal 2. Proposal 1 is a possibility.
Right.
And I actually think that proposal 2 overstates the cost to the cost of staffing that drives toward serving Alpine.
I don't understand that, because this is based on actual cost of what it costs for 4 people in Alpine and
which is
sometimes
perfect if you assume that the 4 people here always serve only Highland and the 4 people there always serve only Alpine. And I don't believe that's the case.
That's why the district, that's why we.
Right.
Anyway, do you have another proposal you want to share, Aaron?
No, and I'll say, I don't think the board got set on, okay, we've got to do some base, but what the other part was. They weren't set that it was going to be population or call volume or anything. I picked that simply because it would be the least impactful to Alpine, honestly, and I'm assuming that's what they might come back with if they come back with an alternative. But overall, kind of where I felt like the board was at and what we've communicated to Alpine is taxable value is on the table right now, that proposal, through the end of the month. After that, we can talk about base costs, but Highland is going to be likely looking for more than 50%. I don't know if 81 is the magic number, right? Like, it's a number if you split everything 50-50. It's not perfect, right? To Doug's point and to some other points we've articulated, right? But it would be more than 50 and at least, or up to 81, right?
So maybe we need to understand, where's our partner at on this with Alpine? Alpine has just started visiting with their other council members. And so we understand the last week they've been able to meet with all their council to bring them up to speed, to try to get their feel. Because the discussion at the board meeting started focusing more on base cost, saying, hey, hold it. If you're going to have 4 and we're going to have 4, maybe we ought to start looking at base costs. But where it's kind of come down into is I guess you have, is this the letter that was sent here, Aaron? Mm-hmm. Go ahead and go through that then.
Oh, no, sorry. So I apologize, Mayor, I misunderstood your question.
Okay, there was a letter sent to Alpine saying, hey, at the board meeting, they started looking more at a base cost. The question Alpine asked was the proposal that Highland gave them of looking at taxable value, was it still available to be considered? And we said yes, as long as we understand by October 30th that you're going to take that. But if they're going to open up negotiation, they want to start negotiating back to, hey, we want you to look at the property tax and add this other stuff. Once you start adding other components, that means all negotiations open back up. Does that make sense? They're going, hey, we've given this proposal, but if you're going to start negotiating that proposal, then we get to negotiate on a base cost. Yeah. Right now, we've told they have till October 30th, and we'll keep with the property tax value as a proposal. Brittany, is that what?
Correct. That's what I understand.
Can I make a couple comments? So, first of all, I really appreciate all the work that our board has been doing and negotiating with Alpine. I appreciate all the work the administration has done. I think all these proposals you've been fleshing out are very good ideas. I think the bottom line is, in my opinion, I'd like to keep the district together, but it's obvious that Alpine needs to pay more. And then so we need to come to some sort of agreement on that. But I guess the big question I have in my mind is we've been discussing this for 5 months. Why does Alpine just need more time to discuss it? Why haven't they been discussing? I'm kind of surprised. And I'm sure some of them are listening tonight, but why hasn't their council been engaged like we have been? I would think it would be important. That's a good question.
I have the same question and quite flabbergasted that they have not been dealing with it because it's been a serious issue. And how have they not?
We've been discussing it for months.
Council members.
Yeah.
My understanding from Alpine was that there are really 2 reasons for this. The first, that they were at least initially waiting for the Lone Peak Public Safety District Board to make a recommendation, and then once that was in place, bring it to their council. And 2, that particularly over the summer, they've had a difficult time getting council together to talk about it because of vacations and other absences.
So maybe to give a better, we believe, and as talking with our attorney, Rob Patterson, he has said, hey, we believe this change needs to be done by a council. That the councils are the ones, the city councils are the ones that will approve the interlocal agreement, and that is probably why we have been more focused that way. What Doug brought up is it appears that Alpine is looking for the board to make the recommended proposal, and then they would take it to their council on having that. And that is something that still, I think as I met with Rob, I said, Rob, we need a letter to go to Alpine stating what's in the interlocal agreement. And Rob, maybe you can share, the last time we changed the interlocal, how was it done?
I think we had all the same council members in 2023. When we updated, we had some questions about how to do quorums and when could an alternate on the board sit in for a missing board member. And So we made some changes that were drafted between me and the attorney for Alpine, and each of the city councils approved it. That's how it was presented. Aaron had a brief presentation to the board saying, this is coming up just for your information, but it was the city councils that drove that change and approved it. That's how as far as I can tell, we've done all of the amendments to the interlocal agreement because it's an agreement between two cities.
So I've asked Rob, maybe to put something to say, from a Highland standpoint, we are looking at being council-led because the councils have to vote on it no matter what. You know what I mean? Because even if but you have to understand, in the interlocal agreement, it talks about the board has to have a four voting members, meaning 2 from Highland and 2 from Alpine, to be able to make a change to the interlocal agreement. And up until now, we have not had that vote. You need to know when we passed the budget, or even to approve this, it was a tie vote at the time. It was 2 Alpine against the budget, 2 Highland in favor, and it took the chair from Highland to pass the budget. Does that make sense? And so with that, we also, in January, here we have a partner that is 35% paying the budget, but they now become the strong partner in January where they control the board. I'm just they have that tying vote.
There was discussion at the last Lone Peak Public Safety District Board meeting about whether a unanimous decision of the board was needed or simply a majority needed in order to change things. And I'd like to emphasize here again that as far as I'm concerned, the city councils can amend that ILA even if every single member of that Lone Peak Public Safety District Board opposes it.
I agree 100%.
And that's how we've been functioning. If you're wondering that, going back, why are we having a little bit of delay? It could be a misunderstanding how the board is supposed to change it. And to be very transparent, if you're in Alpine shoes, what we're asking for them is to start paying more money. The longer it delays, they don't pay, and so there can be some delay tactics being used and not meeting to try to get things, because you don't have to then really respond to the issue. Or they think that maybe we'll quit bringing the issue up and it will go away. So.
Well, I just want to make a couple more comments. So I have a lot of friends in Alpine. I have a lot of patients up there. I think they're great people. But I don't think the way things are now is it's really fair to our citizens in Highland. And I kind of think there's been some undue delay. I mean, our council doesn't go on vacation all summer, right? I mean, we're here, we keep functioning. So I just think, I'm just going to say, I think they need to fish or cut bait. And my feeling is if they're not going to work with us on this, that it's time to go on our own.
That is an option of last resort, but I 1,000% support that. It literally is time for this to get resolved. It's unfair to our residents. It simply is.
It's not fair to Highland.
It's not. And it's not right for us to allow it to continue. We cannot do that.
So any public that's listening needs to be aware. That's why it's now on the agenda, because there is discussion. We'd like to resolve this and be part of the district, but there is discussion for Highland going on its own. That's very transparent what's kind of being discussed. So.
And quite honestly, there's a lot to be said about that option. It does cost more, but it does not cost us near the increase that it'll cost Alpine. And that's the bottom line.
It's not trying to strong arm. We're just trying to say,
no,
pay for the service.
it's just the reality.
You're just saying work with us.
It's just reality. And it's us doing our job, representing our residents to make sure it's done fairly. That's all we're trying to do.
And we've had, I think we all see the benefit of the district. And I hope that we want the police and fire staff to understand there's great benefit we see, and we'll do all of our effort to keep this district together. It's not our goal to go and tear apart the district. We are the #1 public safety district. You look at for the police, and I'm going, what are we doing? And I keep going, are we crazy? You know, and I think we have one of the #1 fire departments out there, and I'm going, we want to keep this together. However, if we need to go on our own, we can still be strong. And so, with that, Chief Williams, there will be a time, as this is just only focusing on fire. Alpine has also mentioned that they would also like to discuss police. And so that will be something that we, at the board, discuss. That would probably be something coming up in the January time period. We did tell Alpine that we'd like to have this resolved by the end of the year. Looking at that, Alpine has a board meeting at the end of the October. They have one in November. They do not have one scheduled at this time. And well, they have it, but it's the city party. And so timing could be a little bit off. And so.
Yeah, so ultimately, you know, this will require a change to the interlocal agreement, right? Which has to go to both city councils to make it happen, as we've all discussed. So depending on how strongly Alpine feels about the board seeing the language before it goes to councils, it might necessitate an extra meeting for Alpine, but that's something they need to figure out. So I put on here, and so right now we set a follow-up meeting for Tuesday, October 28th. Alpine's asked to bump that back so that they can meet with their entire city council that Tuesday, because their normal city council meeting is that Tuesday evening, and they'd like to talk all together. So they've asked if we can bump that Tuesday meeting back. We've proposed Thursday. I haven't yet heard back from Alpine if that'll work for them, but I know, at least from what I've heard, it will work for Highland, and it'll work for we will make it work on the staff level, I'll say that. There are some vacations being shifted around to make that happen, but if the board is committed to making some action, we'll make that happen.
So, and I'm just, you know, here it came up about Alpine being gone a lot. There are some of our board members here in Highland that are making shifts to make sure we can make those meetings.
As there are staff members who are making shifts too.
That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
we are wanting to participate and be an active participant in getting this resolved. So, anything else here, Aaron?
Not unless there's a new direction from the council at this time.
Yeah.
No, I would just say to Councilmember Smith's point about taxable value versus population, I think when we make the decision, we should make it based on what makes the most sense and what's the most fair, not looking at the numbers or what favors one particular city or the other. I just think it has to be because it's the right way to set the formula going forward.
And that was a big thing we kept talking. So just being transparent, there was talk that Alpine might be willing to go down to 3 staff and make sure Highland always had the staffing. And those that were on the board from the Highland side said, we recognize that's a temporary fix, because what we're hearing from our fire chief is, fire chief, what's our correct staffing? I understand you're saying 10, but we need to get up to at least 9, correct? Oh, he wants to come in. No, that's out.
Yes, you're.
Is the button on?
Oh, no. How about that? When we proposed to go to 9, that was phase 1, and then we were hoping to maybe obtain a grant or something of that effect to get to that minimum level staffing. Really, we have to get to 10 to get to that minimum level.
So based off of that, we're going, how do we stay at 8 and only have 3 in Alpine when our fire chief, and I don't think it's just chief, I've tried to say, hey, is this our personality of just our chief? As I've checked with some other departments and things, that is the standard out in the fire department, you know, with the fire standards. So
really, your standard level, I mean, we're talking about service level, right? We're talking about service level to the residents. If you're, I mean, when you're service, you know, providing that service level to the residents, a fire station minimum comes with 4. That's, I mean, most fire departments, if they drop below 4, they shut that fire station down. So we want to come with 4 just to provide that service level to the people that we're serving. So, I mean, the number one step here is to get our service level up where it needs to be so that both cities are getting the service level that they deserve and that, quite frankly, they're paying for. And then, of course, you guys have the hard job of trying to figure out how to pay for it. But I will say this, I mean, nationwide, trend-wise, you look at the East Coast, you look at the West Coast, which is typically where we get influence, you know, it just works its way to the middle. Consolidation of cities, meaning fire protection districts, that has become the way to protect cities. And typically, they're taxing districts that are you know, based on taxable value. But that is the lowest cost to provide that service level. You know, I came from Pleasant Grove, that's a 1 station. You know, their budget, as far as, you know, when you look at what it costs to run 1 station versus what we run 2 fire stations with, I mean, it's a much lower cost to have partners, and the more partners you get, typically, the better value it is.
And for the residents to understand who may be watching, the 4 is critical because you need 2 outside the building. If you need to go into the building to retrieve people,
Yes.
retrieve
Or
pets,
even
whatever
fight
it
the
is,
fire.
you've got to have 2 in and 2 out.
Yes.
That is fundamental. You cannot violate that. OSHA requires that, and common sense requires that. You're putting somebody's life in danger if you don't do that. So we're going to do it right. You're going to do it right as the chief. So that 4 is critical. So when we're down to 3, we have a problem. And for Alpine to say, well, we'll do 3, and you can have your 4, well, first of all, as a district, when you look at it as a district, that's not a wise use of your resources. As a chief, you're not going to be happy with that.
Well, we also take on the risk of going, now we have 3 up there as a district.
Exactly.
I mean, okay, now we just shifted our
Both
risk.
cities are at risk and
Exactly.
that a liability when we're running short-staffed.
So thank you for everything you do, Chief.
A couple of final thoughts. When we talk about getting to the 10, right, so we can have 8, it's about minimum staffing. It's about being able to respond to each call, not necessarily a volume of calls, right? Like it's the fact that in order to appropriately respond to every, like an individual call, you need a minimum of 4. Right? So we're not talking about call volume here because we can cover our calls, right? Chief's not asking for an additional platoon, right, to roll out. That would be based on call volume. We're talking about just proper coverage for each call. I appreciate what Councilmember Bills said about we want something that makes sense, right? It really shouldn't be about the numbers here, right? About who's paying more. It should just be about what is equitable and what is fair and what makes sense long term. Just a thought that crossed my mind. I think if we end up going to the base formula, I think there will be continued strife over that because 81 in a lot of ways makes sense, but in some ways doesn't make sense, right? Like it's a lot more arguable to Councilmember Smith's point than I feel like taxable value is. So just something to consider as council members are having continued conversations.
So once again, Highland's proposal at this time is taxable value.
Right.
So
Which is actually a proposal kind of midway through the others.
say that 1 minute.
It's kind of in the mean.
Yeah, it's kind of in the middle, but as Councilmember Bills talked about, that really isn't the issue as much as what's fair. But what I look at is what can I defend if I'm asked by a resident, what are we doing here and why are we doing it? I want to be able to explain it in a sense that makes sense, that I can say I literally feel like this is fair.
And
To
so-
you as a resident of Highland, this is fair.
The other big thing is we need to, and I mentioned this at the board, I says, guys, we probably could hammer something out and negotiate that our council would agree to. But then it appears that new council members come on and they look at that formula, and I guess I'm one of them. I mean, and I'll admit, when at very first, when Cedar Hills left, I remember looking, going, why are we giving a voting block to this shared voting of 50-50? Why are we doing, and probably right off the bat, I started having concerns. Does that make sense? And so, yeah, it's something that's kind of trickulated after a bit, and you're looking on, and as we've now grown with Ridgeview, you're going, things didn't seem equally going on anymore. And I think when we had a resident, when we went through a call that we had a fire, or the ambulance was coming in Alpine, and we also go, well, hold it. And the residents reaching out to us going, why is the ambulance coming from Alpine? And all of a sudden we're looking in that March and April and going, okay, we have an issue here. And we come to find out that we were staffed down to 3 in Highland and 4 in Alpine, and that's why they had to come out of Alpine. We're going, no, hold it, that doesn't seem to equate very well. And that was that, it didn't seem equal. It doesn't seem, and really what we're proposing back to Alpine is going, we see the value in you also having 4. We're not trying to tell you to go down to 3. We're trying to protect you also, and that's that district model. We're trying to protect you as a district. And so so we're concerned about our partner too. We want to make sure they have adequate fire as well as anyone in our district, because we do have calls that go up the canyon. One thing that's unique about us, Lone Peak Public Safety versus an American Fork gets the revenue of the hospital. We get the revenue out of the canyon. We have different calls. Those could be a little longer. We get the revenue coming out as a transport out of the canyon if there's a transport. But each city has different nuances that they get. And we happen to be, we take the canyon. But yet some of our firemen will come here because of that, because they like that type of different interface up the canyon versus as a transporter, you're going to the hospital and picking up someone to move them to another hospital. Now, some would probably say, hey, that's enjoyable. Those probably working for us enjoy probably being up the canyon every now and then, or the wildland interface, which all of our cities have. We have a wildland program, which other cities don't have wildland programs. So there's different things that the district does bring about.
The last thing that I think that really needs to be part of the interlocal is looking at it regularly so that we're revisiting this every year or 2 years and it's not being brought up because there's a problem or some kind of an issue and it's not in like a heightened state. It's a regular review.
Okay.
I would just like to emphasize that I think both the fire department and the police department need to understand that I believe that we have heard from every elected official up here this evening that we believe we are better off as a district. That is what we are working toward. We've spent a lot of time working toward that, particularly those members of the council who are on the Lone Peak board. When we talk about last resort of going our own way, that's simply acknowledging that we don't have 100% certainty that we'll be able to work something out, but working something out and staying together as a district is, I believe, what everybody on the Highland side is working toward. I think that's what Alpine is working toward as well, but I just don't know them as well, so I'm not as confident there.
And we do feel like we have a good staff, meaning I keep mentioning this, and I've even mentioned this to Alpine, and going, guys, from where we've been and where we're at, what are we doing rocking any boats? I think our police and fire are running about as smooth and as good as it's been in a long time, many years. Scott, you've been on council a long time. Doesn't it feel like, that things are running? I mean, that from the staff and from the police and from the fire, we're not having residents saying, hey, there's some calls we get, okay, how come we're getting this thing here, but things are better than where they've been.
Right, much less drama.
Yes. Except for now at the council, we're having drama to get this. Anyway, okay, well, appreciate that discussion. I'm sorry, we're now past 8:15. Now, we will now move on just to some communication items also on 6B, which is Canal Boulevard traffic calming update. Chris.
So July 1st, we had a meeting with the City Council and we asked for some recommendations on possible solutions to traffic calming along Canal Boulevard. And we had kind of a list of a few things to implement. And I lost the cursor again. There we go. So on that list, we had rapid flashing beacons at Featherstone. We've installed the crosswalk there. We've installed the crosswalk ahead signs, but we have not yet installed the rapid flashing beacons there. We should have those up within the next couple of weeks. We're a little bit short-staffed in our streets department, and he's asking for help from our wastewater truck, so we can use the pump truck to help, clear out the post holes for that. And we expect to get that up in the next couple of weeks.
And can I just make a little anecdote? I really appreciate your doing this because I've kind of been pushing on this, but I came down that road when it was dark one night, and I had 3 kids on bikes in dark clothing crossing that crosswalk, and I had to slam on my brakes because I didn't see them. And so having that flashing thing, and there's a lot of people traversing both of the one down at, what's it called? I'm blanking on it, Willowbank.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be, for safety, I think it's a good idea. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. We'll get that. We did get the optical speed bars painted. Those are there now.
Can I just say on those, I am flabbergasted going down through those. It's subconscious that you slow down. I literally find myself slowing down. I've got to miss these bars, and they're paint. It's like I could drive right over them, but the impact that it has on a driver, because we all know, we're told anyway, and I believe it, that the safest speed is the speed you're most comfortable driving. When those bars are there, I'm uncomfortable driving faster. I literally have a tendency to slow down. So kudos for installing those because I believe they really do work. And I don't know why, but they work.
Well, thank you for the feedback. That's good to know. The radar speed limit signs, we've installed those on the east end of Canal
It's
Boulevard.
made a big difference in the speed.
Good. I appreciate that as well.
Yeah.
Buffered bike lanes, we have not installed yet, and the bulb outs at the Windsor Crossing, we have not installed yet. And we want to talk to the council about a couple of issues that have kind of come up with those two projects. Kind of partly pertaining to, do we really want bike lanes there because of the new legislation that does not allow for parking if we have bike lanes? And also, when we restriped Canal Boulevard in this area, we added a median and we added those bike lanes last year. What we ended up doing was we have 11-foot drive lanes now. So if we were to add a second stripe to the bike lanes, we couldn't really narrow the drive lane. We could put something over to the side, to the inside. And that, I think, would provide some additional delineation to help, you stay focused. But I guess the question we really have for the council is, do we still want to have buffered bike lanes, even if it means that we don't allow street parking? I know when we had the public here for our July 1st meeting, there were people that said they do park. There are people that park along this street. So we just want to throw that out there. And one other issue that we kind of have with that, clear that. If I move on to the next slide.
On the bike lanes question, the no driving in and no parking in the bike lane has nothing to do with whether or not it's buffered. They're already marked as bike lanes, and so it looks in the photo, and so we already have that. You can't drive there, you can't park there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, whether we have it buffered or not.
And aren't we trying to discourage parking along Canal Boulevard? Because it's a connector?
There is one, I remember there was one car that was parked there when I drove, and I'm going, it just seemed it was so close to the road, the way you kind of, like I said, it does feel uncomfortable to have a car parked there.
Yeah.
Well, and just towards the east end of the middle section, we have that median as well that you can see in this picture here. One of the other items that came up is if we wanted to install bulb outs at this trail crossing there, that would impede a bike lane. You couldn't get bikes through there. As an alternative, we did get a bid from one of our concrete contractors looking at an island similar. You can see the picture of an island. That's the one that we installed on 6,000
And I am worried, the one on 6,000, you come down, if you really don't see it, you can also be in the middle, and all of a sudden you're up on that median.
Yeah, that's supposed to get marked. It hasn't yet, but you're right. I think that actually has happened. There was somebody that went over it.
Oh,
so.
I mean, I've been driving down going, I know it's coming up. I'm going,
Yeah.
if you didn't know this, you're almost going to kind of get a little bit airborne there.
You're right. And that gets people to slow down too, I suppose.
Let's not tell folks that you can have a good time getting airborne on the...
Well, no, because once they do, then they would hit they'd probably damage their front end at the next thing.
Okay,
So
Don't do it.
So that was kind of a question or a discussion that we wanted to have with council. Do we want to still stick with the buffered bike lanes? It wouldn't narrow the drive lane per se, but it would, I think there is still some benefit to reinforcing, making that delineation a little bit stronger. That can still help to slow down traffic, but if we did that, we also would go with the concrete island here instead of the bulb outs. We did talk with our street superintendent about possibly putting some of the white delineators along the shoulder line at this location to help narrow it down where we have the island for the crossing. And I know we've mentioned white delineators. Some discussions about that, although that hasn't been presented to council as a possible solution, but just want to throw that out there and see what the council's thoughts were.
Can I ask you a question? So on the eastern part of Canal Boulevard, we've got the one flashing cross line. We're going to do the other one at Featherstone. How expensive are those to install? Why couldn't you do something like that here?
We could. I want to say that they're about $7,000 for a pair of them. We could do that instead.
Just as an alternative.
I kind of like the physical kind of restrictions to narrow it down one way or another, whether it's in the middle with the island or the bulb outs on the side, but I think rapid flashing beacons is another alternative that we could look at. Okay. And it is less expensive. I included the cost for that island to match. It was about $16,000, so it definitely is more expensive than the rapid flashing beacons.
How much was the bulb outs?
The bulb outs we had priced at about 15,000. The island was about 16,000, so I think they're both.
So they're pretty comparable.
Pretty
I kind of like
comparable.
the island idea because of the bike lane. I think if we're going to have bike lanes, let's not restrict the bike lanes.
Wait a minute, isn't that, if we had the island, doesn't that become a problem with the bike lanes, or did I misunderstand you, Chris?
The islands allow the bike lanes to remain.
allows
If-
it, okay.
Because if we did bulb outs, that's when we would have the problem with the
That
bike
makes
lanes.
sense.
What is, okay, so we have a trail, a lot of the people are trying to go over to the Murdoch Trail. So they come off the Windsor Trail and they're going over to the Murdoch Trail. What is safer for someone crossing there on that street? I mean, one is traffic calming, and I would assume the middle island will slow the traffic down more. The bulb out, is it safer because it helps the pedestrian get a little bit more out? I mean, is one,
I think the advantage to the island is you have some safe refuge there as you're crossing. Both of them should help to slow down traffic because you are narrowing the travel lane in either direction. You do get a little bit closer, but I think especially if we wanted to combine some of the delineators with this project, I think I don't know that you couldn't get closer with the island than you could with the bulb outs if we did that.
so now too, what about snow plowing and our fire trucks? I mean, are these gonna be wide enough that a fire truck can come down, they're not gonna, and then also your snow plows?
They'll still be wide enough
Be
for
11 feet?
fire truck. Yeah, they're 11 feet. They'd be wide enough. That's always been one of my concerns when I see some of the delineators in some of the other cities is how does this affect our snow plowing? And I keep wanting to talk to some of their streets departments to ask them because that's my concern. But
Well, this drawing doesn't seem to scale because it should be 11 feet on both
Well,
sides. of
the
that.
drawing is 6,000 west.
yeah,
Yes.
that was just put in there for a reference
Oh, okay.
on what the island would look like.
The
So
other thing that a median helps with, like I'm thinking about, the flashing things are great if somebody actually chooses to push them. We did a pedestrian count recently somewhere else, and less than 50% of the time, kids are actually pushing the button. So it would help if they did
I
that.
thought kids like to push buttons.
You know, you would think, especially when it
My kids
lights
did.
something up.
That's my buttons. Okay.
So council, is there any direction that we can maybe, you'd like to give staff about the bulb outs, the bike lanes, or the median in the middle?
I like the median in lieu of the bulb outs, but I also like the delineators along there too.
I like the median, and I'd like to preserve the bike lanes.
The question with the bike lanes to me is more about bicycle safety and less about traffic calming, because I don't think that's going to have any effect on traffic on the roadway. It just creates that buffer between the traffic and the bicyclists. I generally in favor of buffered bike lanes if we're putting them in where we have space and are able to do it. And I like the median.
And we're talking about buffered bike lanes. We're just talking about paint, not, okay. Just wanted to make sure we were clear on that.
Brittany, any input here?
No, I feel like this is something I'm happy to defer to what staff thinks is best.
And what does staff think is best?
I do think that there's an advantage of still painting that second stripe, even if we're not narrowing the lane to help delineate, and we'll go with the median in the middle. I think that seems like, I think a good approach to this. I will maybe make a couple other comments real quick. It was not something that we discussed before with council, but we did today start to put in the flashing LED stop sign at Canal Boulevard and 6,000 West. We already have it up on 10,400 and 6,000, so it made sense to put some at that intersection. And we can collect data from the driver feedback radar speed limit signs that we have. We have had a hard time actually getting it to communicate with our laptops and not sure what's happening. Part of that is trying to get feedback and see how effective these are. If we still have issues, software issues with that, we might just redeploy the old speed counters and look at the speed, but obviously I think part of this is getting feedback to see how these solutions have worked to help calm traffic, and we'll try to still provide that information.
Okay. So we will now move on to item number 6C, which is Open Space Accelerate. That is Doug Courtney and myself. Doug, do you want to share a little bit why you kind of brought this up as one of the items?
Yeah, I had, when we set the valuation for selling orphan properties for this year, I brought up a concern that I thought we were setting a value that was below market rate, and I wanted to come up with a different approach or tweak the formula. My preference is a different approach. Talked with Rod just shortly after that meeting, got some data, and it looked like we could pull value from assessed value of vacant property and go with that. Talking with Kurt, he pointed out that we actually have enough orphan parcels that we have sold at this point that, at least for now, we could just go with actual assessed value on those orphan properties without having to take a guess at, do we use a 25% factor? Do we use from larger parcels? Long term, it's possible that that will not do it for us because people may combine the lots, and we lose those parcels that we've sold. But for now, we have enough of them out there that we can let the county decide for us.
So the kind of, one of the concerns that came up when we were trying to come up with this many years ago, when we looked at an appraiser, the appraiser said, I don't have comps. I don't have these orphan parcels. I don't know what the private sales are because they weren't going
Exactly
through.
right.
They weren't going through the MLS. Right. It was neighbor to neighbor or things that way. Well, now as we look at it, as you look up here, we actually have sales that the city has completed, and we have parcel numbers that we can now see how the county has done tax value on that, and this is what you're going to see here. So I went, and there's, I mean, we could, in Viewpoint, there might be 8 properties we could use. There, in Twin Bridges, there's probably 10, Highland Hills, but I went and shows, okay, if we choose 2 from each of the subdivisions where we kind of sold parcels, and it was interesting, I looked at, like in Windsor Meadows, and going, okay, there was one larger parcel that we sold. I'm trying to remember the Eagle Farm family. They sit on the Eagle Farm. That's over in the Windsor Meadows. Those are Ezekiel's. Did they buy some property from us?
No.
Who was the other one that bought? There was another family that bought property in Windsor Meadows that got a pretty good chunk. Anyway, it was interesting. It all came back the same square footage.
It had been Roger Mickelson.
It was Mickelson's. I'm sorry, it's
Yeah,
Roger Mickelson.
that's Roger Mickelson.
If you go up to Viewpoint, the averages, this is from the county. So I went and found the county parcel that we sold. The size of parcel ended up being this is the taxable value that the county's putting on. It comes to be $488 a foot up in the Viewpoint. If you notice in all the other subdivisions, it comes in with pennies of each other within 10 cents. Yeah. Well, so as I visited with Councilmember Courtney, I said, we now have cells, and we now have the county's responsibility. This is from the county assessors. Their responsibility is to go and assess, and their county entity, that they will go, and that's their job. And so now we can take their assessed value of what we sold, and it's something we can back into a little easier. And based off of that, I think we're charging $474 this year. Now, this is based off the 2025 values, so this, the future value would be $572. But this is of the cells that we already did, and these are the parcels that represent closer to what type of parcels we'd be selling. And so we wanted to get the feedback from the council. Would this be a better method to go use? Because you actually have government data that's their job to give the value. We have cells that have happened that we're now can track as long as they don't combine with their lot, and it helps us a little bit. And it's created our own comps. Correct. We've created the comps. It's comps we sold. Would there be concerns by you in changing from just, we chose 10 parcels in the past just randomly throughout the city versus now we're looking specifically at areas probably where we've sold open space to come up with the dollar amount?
So I'd like just to make a comment on this. I can understand your reasoning here. And certainly these parcels, you know, become part of their property and it's assessed more in different things. I think in the discussion as we came to surplusing some of this property, one of the reasons we decided to surplus it is not necessarily that it was going to enhance the value of their properties, which it does, but it was also property that we had no way to maintain. And so in many cases, selling the property at a reasonable price actually took, I mean, we get more property tax, but we have to do less maintenance. And so I thought it was kind of a balance. And, you know, the process we came up with, and I think the mayor spent a lot of time coming up with it, I think was a pretty fair process. This obviously makes everything another dollar. And so I guess the goal is I think there's just balancing things. If the goal is for the residents to pay fair market value and it's going to increase their property value and all that stuff, you can make an argument for this. If one of the goal is to resolve some of the conflict in having these parcels that we can't maintain that then become weed patches and sources of contention, does it make sense to factor another in there? So that, I just, having been through all the open space discussions for a long time, I mean, you can make it this expensive, but then what you do is you dissuade people from buying it. Then they come in and say, but the city needs to maintain it, and you're not doing it. And then you also encourage people just to do maintenance agreements. So I think we need to discuss. I mean, it's easy to say, hey, we get more money here, but do we really? You know, so there's just a lot of things that went into that discussion before. So I just think you have to be careful to just jump in and say, hey, we're going to charge everybody $1 more.
Some of it is, I think, as one of the concerns we have to look at as a council. One is, you know, we want to make sure we're being fair, but it has to be fair on both sides. I mean, you got the person buying it, but you have the person at the residence, and so we actually, by code, I think we have to try to get fair market value. Yeah. And that was only, and we did come up with something. Scott is correct. We spent a long time to try to figure out that fair market value and how to come to that, and that's how we've been functioning for the last 5 to 7 years. However, you know, most of our residents, I don't think if it be 474 or 572, in my business experience, they'd be a fool not to buy at either of those prices. But that's up to each individual and how they would decide that. But most of the individuals, I think it's added value. It's allowed some of them to add on their homes. Some have added sports courts. I think it's a great benefit. You know, I wished I could buy more property for 572 or 474 by my house, but that's not an option.
I don't think it's fair to other residents, to the residents as a whole, if you will, to sell for anything less than fair market value.
But we came up with what we felt was the way to do that. It's
and
not
I understand that, and I understand the argument, Councilmember Smith. I really do, and it caused me to pause and go, wait a minute, that really does make sense because we are mitigating a problem.
Correct.
And that's an advantage to us. But at the end of the day, we're responsible for tax and how we spend it and how we receive it. And when we receive it and we're giving it away less than fair market value, that's hard to justify.
But at the same time, and this is what I think you need to do for balance, at the same time, you're cutting your maintenance costs.
And I get that. And it does cause me to pause. So I'm not saying
so
I'm 100%.
What I'm saying is, if you get it too high, and I understand the argument, if you get too high, and you know, we have a high per capita income in Highland.
Yes.
And like the mayor says, like people then can build their big house bigger, put in a sports court and all that stuff. But at the same time, you know, it does cut down on the maintenance that we should provide because what happens is we don't provide it. And then it's a kind of a source of contention because we can't afford it. So I just think you have to kind of balance it in there. I just would like to discuss it more before we just kind of jump into a new formula.
Well, just when Councilmember Doug Courtney brought it up, he said, hey, are we really getting fair market value? And I go, we came up with a formula because we couldn't find comp sales. Does that mean, and that's how and then as we were talking, going, well, we do have comp sales now that, and that would be a discussion for the council. We used, right now, our formula is we use 10 parcels inside the city that we've used consistently, and then we just go take 25% of that value, and that's how we come up with it. Some are 1 acre
That
lots.
25% is very arbitrary, by the way.
But that's what, the reason why we came up with 25 is when we talked to appraisers and they looked at orphan parcels, that's how they were trying to determine, because they didn't have comp sales. Right now, we have comp sales. That was the only thing going. We had, and if we wanted to go get a sheet probably of 40, we have 10 here, we probably could have 40 comp sales, but I think you can still find it. It's going to come in 582. I don't think you're going to have a great variance. I was surprised up in the Viewpoint area. I kept looking to see if it was larger lots or smaller lots, and Viewpoint, for some reason, kept coming back at the 488 almost consistently. And as you can see, all the rest of the city was coming in close to that $6. It was just really interesting. It was only the Viewpoint area that was different. And it was all the parcels that was sold up there. Because I kept seeing it was different sizes. That's why I went to Roger Mickelson's. Roger Mickelson's was over a 1/3 acre we sold to him, and he still came back at the 595. Because that was, I go, okay, no, it's the smaller parcels. But I went that Roger Mickelson's, and I put in his 1/3 acre, and it still came up to 595. And I'm going, okay. Yeah, it was, and I don't know if they just haven't assessed. Now, it might be they haven't assessed, really looked at Viewpoint and assessed correctly, because they do go through and think that would be something to ask Rod Mann about how they do it, because he's our county assessor, how they do that. But anyway, is this something that the council would like, this is something that Doug kind of brought up, is this something the council wants to bring back, this discussion item as something further discussion, maybe as an actionable item, or do we just want to keep with status quo? Doug, anything you want to say there?
Just to be clear, my interest in this is not getting more money for the city when we sell these. I mean, when we look at these parcels, I mean, we're probably talking about, what, $30,000 across all of these, which isn't nothing, but my interest in it is, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that we have a statutory obligation to get fair market value for property that we sell.
Correct. The city must receive adequate compensation consideration for any property it sells.
Given that, I think we need to bring this back, have it an agenda item that we discuss, and discuss the idea of going to these comps with a fair market value.
I think it would be good to have a discussion about it again. I also think these kids should get extra credit for outlasting all the other kids. Can we make that happen?
So we here now make a decree that you get an extra 20, you get extra credit. Will you tell your teacher that we made a motion on that? And so,
Why don't we give them one of these parcels?
come choose.
At a very good price.
We'll name something after you. No. Okay, with that, we'll now move on. I think as staff, it appears we'd like to have this come back.
Yes.
Okay.
So come back as a ready for action or ready for more discussion first? What are we,
Well,
because
more
normally.
discussion
I think a
first.
discussion.
So, okay. So-
Because the last formula was the result of a lot of discussion.
It was.
It has to be a discussion because Scott's making too much sense right now.
Occasionally
I
do.
get your point.
Do you want the discussion this year or in connection with, normally every January we do the update the rate resolution? Do you want it just as part of that and we can maybe have both and talk
Well,
through?
We've got a lot of things towards the end of the year, like the general plan. So let's have this discussion after the first of the year.
Okay.
That's great. Okay, we'll now move on to number 6D, which is protocol for police interaction with elected officials. You got my name down there. Well, and I think, okay, so okay, I think this does come in. Some of it is, as I've been on the council or mayor, there are times where the police do interact with us. And we you know, if there's different things going on at your home and things that way. And then we have read the recent news article where we had an elected official up in the Smithfield area, Smithfield, Utah, which had the officer from their department come, and we, if you watch, you get to see that interaction, which caused, I think with the protocol, how we do it, if it would have been done that way, that council member still would have probably be a council member. And so, Chief Williams, would you like to give some input on how you usually, if there's a call, and how you'd recommend we do it?
I thought we were having this discussion because you are the top person on the council that has the most interaction with law enforcement on the side of the road. So,
Yes.
I
okay,
thought
we
Ken
wanna
had
bring
that.
I'm kidding.
Okay. I try to
no,
be quiet when they do, or when I see them, I do run.
I appreciate the opportunity to just briefly discuss this. I promise I'll be done before 9 o'clock. The mayor's already jinxed us. I'm not going
I'm sorry.
to do it any further. So just a couple of things to preface this. I think it's important to remember and know that being a law enforcement officer, and I've done it for 30 plus years now, is inherently a difficult job to do in and of itself. We meet people on their worst day, and we deal with them in their worst situations. They either have lost a family member, there's been a death or something, they've been involved in an accident, they've been a victim of a crime, they've been criminals themselves, and so they're just, when law enforcement is called, it's rarely because it's just me, or we getting a lot of feedback here. It's rarely because it's going to be a positive interaction. That's why everybody loves the fire department and hates the cops. So, you know, they come to save the day, and we come to make, hold people accountable. And I guess that's part of what is difficult, what makes the job difficult, is people don't generally like to be held accountable for their poor decisions. And so that's when law enforcement gets called. And if you think about it, law enforcement gets called when nobody else can solve the issue or respond to a situation. Law enforcement's there to fix the problem or make things better. So just keep that in mind. It's already a difficult job, and people don't like to be held accountable. I made a couple of bullet points here, and we can discuss them as we go. The first one I would just say is treat law enforcement officers with respect and professionalism at all times. I don't think I've ever had an encounter interaction with this council or the other, or Alpine's council, where that hasn't been the case. I would say by and large, not all of our officers know the elected officials, but by and large, most of them know who you are. Either by face or by name, they'll recognize that. And that's because they make it a point to know who their elected officials are, because there are times that we are going to have interaction with you. Avoid using your official position to influence or intimidate or interfere with the police operations. I think that's part of what came out of Smithfield in him trying to influence what the officers were doing. And by doing so, he was demeaning, he was degrading their chosen profession. And you know, a law enforcement officer takes pride in the profession that he, like all of you, take pride in the profession that they've chosen there to be or to live. I think the third bullet point I put down here is understand and respect the boundaries between governance, the policymakers, and operations that law enforcement do. There is a separation there, you know, and that not only counts for local elected officials, but all the way up to, you know, our federal government. You guys are the policymakers. Law enforcement's job is to enforce those policies or laws that are enacted by public bodies. I think one that I liked here was avoid giving instructions or directives to police officers. More times than not, people think they know how to do law enforcement's job better than law enforcement knows how to do their job. Again, part of the interaction that we saw in the video that came out of Smithfield. Law enforcement takes their job seriously. They go to a lot of trainings, specialized trainings, and if two officers show up on a call, there's typically a good reason for that. A lot of it's officer safety. We talked a lot today about safety when fire responds to calls. There is a reason to have more than one officer at times on any particular incident. And there are variables that are in that. And then the last thing I put down there, and the most important thing, is to remember that you're being recorded. Everything that you do and say is going to be recorded. Each of our officers, and most officers in the state of Utah now, carry a body camera, and by law, they are required to record their interaction with the public. Now, there are a few exceptions when you get into a private residence or in a private space where you're either in a bathroom or restroom where you don't want to record people in their intimate settings, and you can cease the recording then, but Law enforcement officers are, by law, supposed to record their interaction with the public. So just remember that the law enforcement officer is being recorded, but you're also being recorded. And also, but those are the kind of some basics that I put down. So I'm happy to answer any
So
questions.
can I give you some scenarios to maybe help walk us through? So let's assume the mayor happens to be working late, and he comes and he makes a turn, and a police officer wonders, because it's so late at night, that they pull over, and it could be any mayor, but they, we're not saying, but happens to pull over.
It never did happen.
Just hypothetical.
Hypothetical.
Asking for a friend.
Yes, asking for a friend. If there- and they happen to pull us over. How would you like us, would you like us just to be quiet, let the process just go forward? Would you like us to say, hey, just so you're aware, I happen to be the mayor, city council? Share with us how you'd like us to interact at that time.
I would say just be respectful and answer the officer's questions. If you feel like you want to or need to inject that you're part of the local city government, I'm not saying don't do that. I don't know that it will make a difference in what the officer decides to do. It may or may not. It may swing one way or the other. But always be respectful and just ask the officer, just do what the officer is requesting you to do. Keep your hands in a place where they can see him. Don't make any furtive or sudden movements. Don't be reaching into places where the officers can't see it. That's what makes officers really nervous, is when hands disappear, because hands will kill you. And especially if a traffic stop is one of the most dangerous things that an officer does. You're walking up on a car that you don't know who's inside it. You don't know what they're capable of. You don't know if there are any weapons in there or what their intentions might be. It could be completely innocent, but we've seen officers die on the side of the road from simple traffic stops. It happens quite frequently.
So now I'm going to bring in another scenario, just asking, and this is because I've seen some council members. Let's assume that there is a family situation going on, maybe with one of your children or with a spouse, and you're now needing to call because of that situation. How would you like a council member or mayor now to, how would we interact that way now?
Much the same way. I think if in those circumstances and situations, if they're coming to your home, I think it's a bit more appropriate to let them know that you serve on a council or that you're part of an elected body. That's a bit more appropriate. Again, it may or may not, it's most likely not going to change the circumstance or the scenario or what the officer's decisions might be. Because typically, again, when they're going to be there, there's a violation of the law or there's something they need to investigate, and there are policies and protocols and boxes that need to be checked, and in each and every single one of those. And so they'll just make sure that they're doing their job, and just, again, be respectful. The officers know that they're on your property, they're in your home, but they're there to do a job as well. And this is what you pay them to do. Let's remember that. They're not there because they're volunteering. They're there because you're paying them to be there, and you're paying them to do the job that you're asking them to do.
At what time would you then bring in another agency to handle the call? I mean, like what triggers saying, okay, now I'm heading to this type of call and it's elected official, we need to have an outside agency come in?
If it's anything that would be criminal in nature, even in the slightest bit, we would conflict that out to another agency, and we do that almost every time. If it doesn't appear criminal on its face, but it may be going forward, we will always have an outside agency come in and take that call, just so there's no conflict and there's no influence one way or another because of your position on the council.
In Smithfield example, would that have avoided what happened had they had that same policy?
Probably not. Well, I'm sure Smithfield has that same policy, but again, that's an initial.
They didn't know it was criminal at that point.
Correct.
They kind of,
Also,
they were
that's
going there
an
for a kid that had an accident,
Yeah.
so they knew there was criminal, he'd left the scene of the accident.
That's an initial contact. So we will come out and make initial contact most of the time. But after that initial contact, if it looks like it's going to be criminal in any way, shape, or form, we will contact an outside agency.
That's a good
And
policy.
if you watch that video, this is them walking up and making initial contact with the resident of the home. Now, they may or may not known who he was before he interjected that into their interaction.
The police officers did a great job.
Well, I agree. They were very
Very.
extremely patient, in my opinion. But I would, if I were a betting man, had that gone the way that it should have gone, after they made their initial contact and figured out what was going on, another agency would have been called to
Yeah.
come and take that report.
Now, we're only talking elected officials, but we have on our Lone Peak Board, we have Aaron that serves, and we have
Your boss.
Rob, that's also the attorney for the city, and you have our, accountant that's for the Lone Peak Board, but also for, would that be the same situation, that there could be a conflict there, because they?
Yeah, so I'll give you a prime example. So we had one of your employees that was involved in a traffic accident in their own private vehicle, but because they were a city employee, we had another agency come up and take that accident after we made the initial contact and figured out what the relationship was. So the same thing would pertain to each and every single one of us in here, except for Erin. She doesn't get a pass.
On a little separate, I agree with that. Aaron doesn't get a pass. On a separate topic, concealed carry. If I'm carrying and I have a concealed carry permit, I divulge that immediately to the officer?
Yes, in your initial interaction with the officer, I would let them know if there's a weapon in the vehicle, specifically a firearm, let them know that there is one there and where it is.
Very good.
Sometimes they may, depending on where it is and the type of situation, they may disarm you. Every time that somebody has told me that there's a firearm in the car, that tells me right off the bat, they mean no harm. And so I just tell them, leave it where it is, don't touch it, and we don't have a problem. So if it's in the glove box,
That's when you
it's on
get
their
the
side.
permit, that's what they train you to do. I just wanted to make sure firsthand, is that really what you want?
Now we're following that, and I know, Scott, you went, but can I just follow? So in the state of Utah, you have to go and get a permit, you used to have a permit, but we have some that, now we're just an open carry state, so some could have, they could carry. Do we have a policy if someone can carry inside a city council meeting?
Mayor, the state of Utah eliminated the concealed carry requirement, I think it was 3 years ago.
Correct.
So you can now conceal carry without a permit in the state of Utah, but
So-
you can also open carry as well.
But it's still wise to mention that
Yes,
you are
absolutely.
carrying.
Now, let me ask, if we happen to carry, would you want us, since you're here present, if we were carrying, I'm not saying we are or anything, but if it was, would you like us to notify, hey, we're going to be carrying in meetings or things that way?
I think a side conversation wouldn't be inappropriate, but if you don't feel comfortable telling me that, I'm fine with that too.
I just, with what the events somewhat have gone on in the world. Okay, Scott, I think you had, I'm sorry I interrupted there. Did you have a question?
I just had a question. So I guess I just want to clarify. You said, like this, you had an issue with a city employee, you brought in another agency. What does that mean? If you pick us up for speeding in Highland, you'll call an American Fork or something?
No, if it's a simple speeding traffic citation, that wouldn't be it. But if it's a traffic accident where we have other parties that are involved,
Okay.
we would call American Fork, or if we're closer to the Lehigh border, we ask for a Lehigh, and they would, and we've done the same thing for them. We go down there and we'll take accidents for
So if
city
it's a
employees.
traffic accident and there's going to be liability on one side or the other, and you have to
Correct.
decide that, you don't want to be accused of being preferential to your city person who you kind of
But
work
if you're
for.
having a
Okay.
disagreement with this, and then just occasionally a disagreement with the spouse, or you're having maybe issues with your children that might be, because if you're having a disagreement with your spouse, wouldn't that maybe turn where they have to ask one of you to leave? I don't know how I thought the law was that someone, if there's a thing that one has to be asked to leave, or if you're having an issue with a kid, that they might be cited for, different things that way, would you want to have a different agency come in on that?
By and large, yes, you would have another agency come and handle that. And depending on the circumstances, asking somebody to leave, if it's a domestic violence issue and there's an arrest made, most likely they'll go to jail. Sometimes they'll be issued a citation, and we need to separate the parties at that point. And we'll usually ask one of the parties to leave, and sometimes there's a mutual agreement on which one will leave. But that doesn't happen it's not a hard, fast rule either. If there's nothing criminal that's occurred, but there needs to be a timeout period, if you will, for people to cool off, we'll try and find accommodations for somebody to go stay somewhere else.
Brittany's been pretty quiet because I guess your kids are pretty good, but the rest of us have a lot of questions. So, is there anything else the council would like to ask? Thank you, Chief. We do appreciate. I know there's times where we want to be sensitive about your job and be respectful to the officers that come and things that way. So we appreciate them being out there.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to our next item, which is building security, and that will be Aaron and myself we talking a little bit about that.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be brief. Ultimately, as you mentioned just a moment ago, the recent events have been very impactful to me personally. Just they've hit me hard, and they've made me open my eyes to the fact that as much as we all hope and we all pray that nothing catastrophic happens in our community, it could. With that, I'm seeking permission from the council to look at some options to potentially improve our building in case of an active shooter. I'm thinking particularly about this room, I'm thinking about the library, and I'm thinking about City Hall, like the front desk area, I'm sorry. Ultimately, I'd bring those, what I'd like to do is discuss those options with a firm, get some options, get some costs, and then bring that back to council. That is something we could discuss in a closed session because it would be related to security. It's one of those things that the state allows us to do. We don't have any budget for this. It would need to come from fund balance. My position is that's an appropriate use of fund balance. Honestly, the recent events have given me great pause. And I know we talked about this during the pandemic because we had some extra money coming in and some options. And I know there were some concerns about making our city feel unwelcoming. And I certainly don't want to do that. And I want to explore ways that we can protect you all, protect our staff, while still being welcoming to our public.
Yeah, I agree, because I've worried. I mean, I've sat on the council for some time, and you always worry about someone that's really angry. I actually had one of my neighbors who was an FBI agent, came in a really controversial time, who sat on the front row with his gun to kind of protect me. And I never felt really threatened, but he was worried about it. So sometimes people get really emotional, and we're just seeing a lot of political violence. I think we have to assume that, I mean, there's always going to be that exception, but I have to say the citizens of Highland are wonderful people.
Absolutely.
And I think we have to be really careful, because in the pandemic, we started putting up all these screens and glass, and you had to do things under little slots. And I think we have to be careful to avoid stuff like that if we can, because it really does give the appearance that we're afraid. I don't think we should be afraid, but I think we need to be careful.
Yes.
And have a plan. I mean, if we had an active shooter come into this or into the council chambers, what would we do? So I think sometimes there's contingency plans you can make without making a lot of physical changes. I mean, we could put bulletproof things up in front of us, but
Right.
We don't want to do that.
No, by and large in this room, my intention is people wouldn't really know what we had done, right?
Right,
Because we're supposed to be interacting with the public, but just if we can do some things to help provide a little bit more security for all of us, I would sleep better at night, let's say that.
I'm very much in favor of discussing that and bringing some things back, and we've got fund balance that we can spend for that.
I agree that it's absolutely appropriate use of fund balance. The only caution, and I don't believe I even have to say this because it's going to be built into any engineering work that is designed, architectural design, that we build in ADA compliance to make sure we don't sacrifice ADA compliance in the name of safety. I don't believe anybody out there is going to recommend that, but we just have to be sensitive that we're not compromising ADA compliance.
No, and as Aaron brought this up, I think I've had some of the same concerns Aaron did. I think the events that have happened down at UVU, I would have thought UVU was a very safe campus. When we heard what's happened over in Michigan, I thought it was a very, I think when we found out it was maybe a church congregation that we could relate to, some of us. That was eye-opening. You know, as different events happened, I mean, there's some other events where things you're going, okay, how do we secure and make everyone feel that security? Unfortunately, the business we're in, we do have people sometimes frustrated with us. And I think we need to be sensitive that sometimes bad actors people make bad decisions. And just, for some reason, people are looking at solutions this is a solution, is to come in and do something. And that's my concern why, when Aaron brought it up, I said, yeah, I think we need to look at some of the concerns. We all want to say we're in the safest area, and we are in the safest city. We keep saying that, but I guarantee if you go talk to the chief, he'll probably share some other experiences going, oh, okay, even though we're safe, there's things that are not safe. And so, Brittany or Scott, anything else you guys would like to share on that? Okay.
I just think we have to find a balance. I think we need to be safe, but we still need to be an open community.
And I remember, Scott, when they were saying, hey, let's
I think we
try
need to be safe, but not afraid.
Yeah, and that's correct. Okay. Anything else we need to cover at all? Okay, let's just, once again, do we have anything with the calendaring up there at all? We have our candidates at 6 p.m. this Thursday, City Council on the 21st. Lone Peak Public Safety at this time would probably be moved to the 30th. I think that's on there. So that would probably be moved to the 30th. Planning Commission is the 28th, which they will most likely be finalizing the general plan, correct?
That is the plan, and I would just, you got an email on this, but also the general plan is on the city's website, so you can all review it. We can have the public review it. We're welcoming comments for the Planning Commission to incorporate into what they recommend to the council, and then you will have a chance then to make any changes you want after, so you'll have a long time. But if there's anything you want to say now, or if you want to have any residents comment, please send them in to us.
We have our big election day on the 4th, and then we have our only city council in November will be on the 25th. We have our only city council meeting at this time on December 2nd, and then we have a Christmas party. Hopefully all of us have that on our calendar, and there could be a special meeting held a little bit later in December if it was deemed it was necessarily for our city council.
And I think you said that the only city council meeting in November will be the 25th. And it will be the 18th.
It's the 18th. And the only council meeting at this time we have scheduled in December is the 2nd, unless there's a special one called.
So can I ask a quick question about the candidate debate? So you may have already emailed this out and I missed it, but what's the for the debate? I mean,
Yes.
we obviously get an open introduction, a
Cage fight.
Yeah.
Cage fight.
Cage fight.
Bring your shorts and T-shirt. We're going after it.
Well, then Wes is going to win.
Yeah. Anyway, so are we following the similar format as what we've done in the past, where there's an opening statement and then there'll be questions from the moderator? Is Kurt Collmore, is that correct? Or is
Correct. I did send out an email previously today. It was very
Okay, so I haven't seen it today.
Very right before the meeting. No, don't worry about not getting that. So yes, there will be an opening statement, a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate, including our mayoral candidate. And then we'll go into our debate questions. We anticipate there will be about 6 questions that will accommodate the time that we have allotted for the debate. And they will be rotated through, so each person will have the chance to have the question asked of them first. And we'll just rotate through, and then at the end, there's going to be a 2-minute closing statement from each candidate, including our mayoral candidate. And then at that point, we'll have 30 minutes for tables out in the lobby for residents to visit just briefly after the debate with the candidates.
So what time can we set up?
Tables will be ready for you at 5 p.m.
Okay.
Okay.
And just one question, because I haven't seen the email.
Yeah.
How long do we get to answer each question?
Very good question. I skipped over that. You will have 2 minutes to answer each question.
2 minutes? Okay.
Yep. So 2 minutes for everything. Keeps it simple.
2, 2, 2, and 2.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2,
Okay.
2.
Okay, one thing we don't have down here that I noticed on the dates, October 23rd, is that Thursday? Yep. Is our trick or treat in the park back here. So we want to start advertising that also out, and if the council can kind of plan. Thursday, October 23rd will be our trick or treat night. Trick or treat street or So that's kind of what we're planning. Okay, now, Rob, are we still planning, going into closed session? There it is. We need a motion.
I move that the city council recess the regular city council meeting to convene in a closed meeting in the executive conference room to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation as provided by Utah Code annotated 52-4-205.
I'll second it.
Okay, you have a motion by Doug, seconded by Ron. All in favor? Yes. Do we need to do roll call? Okay, Brittany? Yes. Scott?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And Ron?
Yes.
We are now